Oh, ladies and gentlemen, it is the most rogues of heels, the rogue heel. I got a whole bunch of potatoes to my left. I got coffee in front of me, and I got politics staring me right in the face here too. And we got a lot to talk about today. Not only do we have plenty to talk about for some actual like YouTube segments I'm gonna actually put together, but I got two new TikToks. Check out the socials. I'll pump it out here in chat right now. Check out all my socials up on TikTok. You guys gonna have a blast. I hope you enjoy it. Absolutely absolutely fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely fantastic date scheduled for you today. Double entendre there. Let's start the show. What a beautiful day it is. What a beautiful day it is. What a beautiful day in the neighborhood it is. I apologize if your eardrums bursted from that too. I'm gonna work on the singing. I promise. Maybe. Where is the other browser? That's window capture. What am I doing? Is the windows that captured? New playlist inbound. New playlist inbound. Hope everyone's having a good Saturday. Late afternoon today. Wanted to start a little bit earlier. Sunday I'm going to start off like in the morning, at least by 10 o'clock. My sleep schedule is completely fucked now too. Also, the two streams that were copyright struck because Viacom, CBS fucking copyright strike those videos. So I had to remove the Daily Show segments that were in there. That's my bad. I should have known better. And then repost those videos. That took a while too. Don't have the greatest of PCs, so everything took a while. Everything took a while to download and then upload, edit. I am not an editing master. I will need to get an editor as I continue to grow. That's gonna happen sooner rather than later. Let's go ahead and end the peaceful sounds of pretzel rocks and go into some politics. So we got something here from NBC News. This is a panel in regards to the Tennessee Three and how two of the lawmakers there, Justin Jones and Justin Pearson, were wrongfully, in my opinion, I think in a lot of people's opinions, expelled from the Tennessee state legislature for what would be a procedural breach. Now, what's not in dispute is that they committed a procedural breach. The issue is the action taken as punishment for the procedural breach. The last two times that a member of the Tennessee state legislature was expelled from that state legislature was one, multiple counts of sexual assault, and two was bribery, improper use of campaign finance funds to enrich themselves. So those are grounds for expulsion of a member of that state legislature, not for a breaking of a procedural matter where they could have been admonished. And I forget the other term, what the other term was. I talked about it in my TikTok video too. If you haven't checked out my TikTok, I'm doing my best to post up daily political videos where I'm just basically shitting on cons and conservatives and talking about the important issues that you guys actually want to hear about too in the progressive space. So go ahead and check that out too. The links are in the chat there. And it was completely disproportionate too. And it was a power move by the GOP. These two young men, from everything I've read about them, representing Memphis and Nashville respectively, they're very popular amongst their constituents. People generally think they're doing a good job. I believe it was Justin Pearson, who's only been a week on the job too. He's already bucking a trend because he was wearing a dashiki to the state legislature, which is, I don't really care, frankly. But Republicans are trying to assert as much control at every avenue that you think of, whether it's controlling a woman's body, restricting abortion rights. And we're going to be talking about that too, because apparently you have a judicial district in the state of Washington and you have a judicial district in the state of Texas now that have an injunction. Are they both injunctions? I forget. There's an injunction in Texas, and I forgot what happened in that district in Seattle, what that's specifically called. I got to take a look into it. I believe, here we go. That's one of the videos here. How did I understand the dueling abortion pill courts? I forget the company too, but we'll go ahead and watch the video. The one in the quote unquote liberal jurisdiction basically tells the court, hey, you can't stop selling that pill. You have to continue to sell it. But in the Texas one, it basically says, hey, you have to stop selling it. So this has to get challenged this has to go up to the Supreme Court, and there has to be some sort of resolution in regards to that. So because there has to be a resolution in regards to that, let's go to the Supreme Court. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know how the Supreme Court is going to rule on that. I really don't. Because remember in the Dobbs decision, the decision that overturned Roe v. Wade, and Dobbs, essentially the Supreme Court said, hey, we're going to leave it up to the states. Okay, so if the state of Washington says we're going to allow you to sell this pill and continue to grant access to people who want to get a medical abortion, for example, and say they have limited access to abortion How do you rectify that? Because the company, right? That company, that pharmaceutical, is one of the big pharmaceutical companies. They do business in all 50 states. I wonder now if the Supreme Court might have to overrule the Texas decision, because you can't, because we're talking about interstate commerce. I can tell you immediately they're going to start talking about interstate commerce. Can an individual state restrict interstate commerce? My answer is no. From what, I'm not a lawyer, and I think more learned people are going to talk about this too. This does have interstate commerce does implications. I really do think that, because you're asking this one business to restrict business in this one state, which affects interstate commerce. So can you, but if the state doesn't allow for medical abortions and doesn't allow for you to access that, now do you see where I'm getting at? Do you see how like these conservative Republican bills now might be contradicting Supreme Court precedent now? That's the sort of issue, and I want them to like talk about that too, because the conservative majority on the court, they have to rectify that, because if they say that, oh, Texas can do that, well then any state then can implicate interstate commerce after that. That's I just thought about that too. Now, if a lawyer wants to come in and chat about it, feel free to. That's like the first thought where I get into. You have issues with interstate commerce, for example, and you might have some issues with, I don't know if there's supremacy clause issues that are there too, because the federal government essentially has final say over interstate commerce. But we'll see what happens, because this has to get resolved by the court, and I wonder how the court's going to rule on this. Because if they're going to say that Texas can deny the selling and access of that pill, then what legal like loopholes are they going to have to work through too? You're basically, they're the ones, I don't get it from conservatives. They're the ones who care about the Constitution so much, but they're the ones who continuously punch holes in the Constitution in it all the time, and I just don't understand it too. And it's biting them in the ass too. We saw the clip from the Majority Report some time ago too. In this Republican-controlled district, the Republican constituents there on that school board, they were implicating one another about them implementing or teaching CRT in the classrooms. Even though it's a Republican-controlled school board, the district is like a deep red. And the Republican head of that committee and the other committee members are saying, hey, we're not teaching CRT. We don't want CRT on here, and we've made sure that it's not on there, but you're now accusing us of teaching CRT, and that's just not the case. You know what I mean? Do you understand like how like difficult like that is? Like you're eating your own at that point, and you've created this monster now that's getting out of control. So now you're supposed to be just canceling the left. Well, you're canceling each other now. So let's get back to this now with the Tennessee 3 and what NBC News has to say about it. But I'm very interested to see like how this is going to happen, because this Republican brain rot, this conservative brain rot that's affecting the country too, they're devolving. It's all just evolving right in front of our eyes. I'm here to see. I'm a partisan. I'm a Democrat. I'm a liberal, progressive Democrat, whatever you want to call me. I'm on the left, and I love to see it, because the downfall of the Republican Party would give me nothing but the greatest of joys. But let's go ahead and play this video.
Joining me now, Eugene Scott, senior politics reporter at Axios, Jen Psaki, the former White House press secretary and host of Inside with Jen Psaki, Sundays on MSNBC, and Daniel Pletka, the senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Eugene, this story is I'm going to feed off of something Governor Hutchinson said. Is this a story that is about Tennessee, or is it about something bigger?
It's about something bigger, which is why last night the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Stephen Horsford, who's from Nevada, had a meeting with the CBC, which is people outside of Tennessee, and actually black lawmakers from states across the country to figure out what they are going to do, because there's real fear that this is not going to end in Tennessee. And one of the things that Horsford did today was send a letter to Mayor Garland to see if some Civil Rights Act violations were violated. So this is way bigger than Tennessee.
Danny, the premise I started with at the top is that, yes, this happened in Tennessee. This feels like this has been something that was going to happen somewhere in these state houses, that we're getting. First of all, the state legislatures are suddenly more relevant because they've had some hot button issues, particularly abortion and guns. Gerrymandering is more extreme and the state house level. It was Tennessee this time. It could have easily been Missouri. It could have easily been Florida. It could have easily been, you know, California. They were in the reverse with the way it is. Or do you see something else here?
No, it's not that I see something else, but I do see something bigger going on. I'm not sure I see the exact same thing that you see. We've become a country where you, instead of...
That's actually, I'm going to give Chuck Todd like a very good... Me praising Chuck Todd, right? Who would have guessed it? I'm going to give Chuck Todd like a lot of credit here. He's right about that too. It's been brewing for quite some time. And now, as a country, we're being confronted with all these issues because it's... Let's concentrate on Tennessee for a second. It's not about police gunning down like a black man, right? It's just gun violence across the board affecting everyone, regardless of the color of your skin, the God you pray to, and your economic level, because it's going to happen to anybody, right? And eventually, Republicans have to like respond to this. You can't keep taking money from the NRA and keep saying, we need to give people more guns. That's not working. People have almost, I don't want to say unlimited access to guns, but it's real easy to get a gun now in America, especially in the South. And a lot of the gun violence you're seeing is being highlighted in these southern states. Even the people in the South now who are pro Second Amendment, they're saying now, hey, this is like too much. We need like some sort of legislation to stop it. And Republican lawmakers are pushing back hard against even like the simplest, like red flag laws, for example, or removing guns from people who've been charged with like domestic violence. So it's like small changes like that are like nearly like impossible to get through to Republicans. And now you're seeing sort of the extreme now with the expulsion of the two of those three Tennessee lawmakers, where it's brewing now. Something big is about to happen in the next couple of years. It's not going to happen. I don't even think it's going to happen in the presidential election, but it's building up now, where there's going to be court cases. There's going to be major money pouring into like even state and local elections, like almost $12+ million in that. You see Prosiewicz there on the right hand side of the screen. Her race, I think it was actually even more than that when all said and done. I gotta look at the numbers again. It was over. I know for a fact at the time when I was reading, it was at 12 million, which is the most ever spent on a Supreme Court seat in the state of Wisconsin. I think in any state, frankly. That's kind of crazy to me. I don't know if you guys find that crazy. I find that crazy. But there's something brewing, and Republicans are going to get a big awakening. That graph. Fuck around, find out. And they've been fucking around all this time, and now they're going to find out. And these stories can't be hidden now. Right? It's not like back in the day where there's only like 2 or 3 networks. You got those 3 big networks. You got the smaller networks online. You got TikTok. You got Twitter. You got Instagram. You got Facebook. The information cannot be hidden anymore. And more people are now blowing the whistle on this stuff. More and more people are reporting on this too. And Gen Z now is getting more active. And they ain't going to the right, folks. They're going further and further left. And a lot of them are getting more energized now than previous younger generations. More so than even millennials. Because they gotta live with this. They're seeing the repercussions of like what the past generation has done and failed to like do. And they're saying for our future, we need to do something more. So let's continue with the video.
Doing what you should do, you do what you can do. Should they have done this? They're within their rights. They had a vote. It was a Democratic vote. It was done properly. They expelled them. Should they have done that? I don't think so. Alvin Bragg, should he have brought those charges against Donald Trump? Well, he could, and he did it within his rights. Should he have done it? I'm not sure. We've become a country that no longer talks about whether choices are the right choices to make. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And that goes for Republicans, it goes for Democrats, it goes for you and me, it goes for all of us.
I hate this both sides thing. It's not like it's not this both sides. It's one side of the aisle that's like doing it and being flagrant about it. Well, my side of the aisle is willing to talk about. And I'm not including all the crazy people online, the crazy leftists online. I think there's like too many of them. They're very loud voices. But the Republicans have been listening to those very loud minority voices on their side of the aisle too. And now they're taking root. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Donald Trump. Donald Trump has a pretty big voice, but he's been manipulating a lot of those voices. He's been getting those people on his side leading up to his first presidential run. He's doing it again. And Republicans are refusing to have that conversation, but Democrats are willing to have that conversation. All right, so I hate this both siding. The other side, the right side of the aisle, doesn't want to have this conversation, especially about the debt ceiling too. All right, we still don't know what they want to cut. We know what they want to cut. We just wanted to say it's Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. Okay, that's what they want to cut. But they're never going to say it out loud because amongst Republicans, they don't want those programs to be cut because they use them quite a bit. Okay, so both siding, not a fan of it. It is one side of the aisle. It's the right side of the aisle. Left side of the aisle is one to have that discussion and come up with common sense legislation to solve the problems that are affecting this nation. The right side just points to one group or another group and says, hate these people because they're doing whatever amorphous thing they can make up and say they're doing to you.
We were talking about, it does feel like that nobody ever thinks, well, maybe I can do this, but should I pull back? Should I take a breath? What do you think? What do you think this means? What do you see?
I think they're very different circumstances. Targeting a district attorney who's now received hundreds of threats and is just carrying out justice, which, by the way, is his obligation, is very different from voting to expel legislators who are elected by their people. But I will say, on the point of, like, how do you decide what to do and what not to do? I mean, the Republicans in Tennessee just elevated these two state legislators who, by the way, happen to be incredibly passionate, powerful, and are now on the national scene.
Did you see their speeches, man? I do. I just want to get like a clip of like what they said. These guys could speak, man. These motherfuckers can speak. I was like, oh my God, preach, Pearson, preach, Jones. Damn, man, I was engaged the entire time. They were telling them. And like, you elevate these guys and you're like, bro, you've given them like national prominence now, and they're going to fundraise like crazy off of this, and they're going to take back those seats. And I don't like the fact that the supermajority Republican state legislature in Tennessee threatened the city of Memphis, by the way, and said that there are certain programs and there's certain funds specifically to some of the stadiums that they have there will deny you if you allow this man in the bottom right hand corner here, Justin Pearson, from running again. If you allow him to run again, some of that money, whoop, might go away from the budget. That's not right. That's not right. You cannot hold up that money for the people of the city of Memphis just because you don't like this one black guy there. That's not right. And if you think that's right, there's something wrong with you too. They elected this individual. You don't have to like him, but they elected him. They wanted him to be the voice. The majority of people in the city of Memphis elected him. So he's the voice of those people. You've not denied them their voice because you decided to kick a guy out who's only been a week and a half on the job. And that really like grinds my gears. That really does. You could have admonished him. You could have censured. That's the word I was looking for before. You could have censured him too and put a mark on his, record, whatever. But you didn't have to expel him. That was to such an extreme. But they knew they could do it, and they wanted to send a message. You know what the message is? The Republicans. That's the message I got from it. Fuck the Republicans. Vote Justin Pearson back in the office. Vote Justin Jones back in the office. Give him as much money as you can. And you elect more people like that who are willing to take a stand against gun violence, murdering your kids on the streets. All right? They keep saying like they love their kids. They want to protect the kids. Republicans do. But they don't do jack shit and actually keep promoting programs to do it. They don't. And whenever those programs get brought up to them, hey, what about prenatal care? What about this care? What about advances in mental health care? You guys keep talking about that stuff. No. Throw it out. So fuck them. And there's another blue wave coming, folks. There's another blue wave. I can feel it. It's hitting the bottom of my feet right now. It's nice and cool and it's crystal clear. You can see all the way to the bottom. And at the bottom is all the Republicans' broken dreams and promises to all their corporate sponsors and whatnot. And it's happening too. If you want things to actually get done, vote Democrat.
Talking about gun violence and the threats to
exactly.
children. That is
Tell
not
them,
what
Jen.
they intended. So in
Tell
a
them.
crazy way, as horrible as what happened yesterday was, it has backfired and has now elevated an issue that they didn't want to be talking about. The Republicans who expelled them.
The Obi-Wan Kenobi effect. If you strike me down, I become more powerful.
Exactly.
Absolutely. It does feel, this comes to this larger question that I've also had, which is, it's just been a it's not good for the Republican brand. This is not, it doesn't matter. And especially when the outcome was they ousted the 2 black lawmakers and they didn't that was, you're like, no, they didn't, right? It was one of those, you're like, really?
I don't know how one could look at this and think that this will expand your party with, of course, obviously with black people, but with the young voters, the kids who were there, hoping that the action that these lawmakers would take would be actually about gun violence. You know, I don't know what the thought behind this was that made them think that this would be a winsome approach to this.
Well, this is what I wonder, Danny, is that, and this is the other concern I have, is that when you cocoon yourself, whether it's via the gerrymandering process, right? You cocoon yourself from competition. It's the information ecosystem that they don't even realize how bad this might look to the broader picture here.
You say something that I was just talking about on our podcast, because there was a poll that came out last week in the Wall Street Journal that showed these vast drops off in patriotism, in wanting to have children, in community service, in all these things. The only thing that really went up was the importance of money. And but the poll itself was flawed. But one of the reasons we were talking about it is because this is a reflection of how divided things are in this country. The perception, though, of division is really mostly among us. Other people, whether it's black Americans or it's Hispanic Americans or it's non-college educated white people, they actually don't feel strongly one way or the other. But none of us meet anybody different. These folks in Tennessee, they're not meeting anybody different. They don't see anybody different to talk to. They should have talked to the people who were demonstrating, for sure. But their constituents see this as a battle to the death. This is the problem for all of us. And it's not a Republican problem or a Democrat problem. It's an American problem. It's something we all need to figure out. Because if you think you're cocooned and nobody's going to judge you for it, you're right. But of course, that's not how it's going to work out.
No, this is where, and I don't know how to do this, but I wish we could prioritize competition when it comes to drawing lines. That you take and say you can't use the average of the statewide totals with governor's races, so that, because if you don't prioritize competition, then you're never. I always say
there's so few
that's
House
what
races.
Ranked choice voting does, by the way.
That was what it was supposed to do. Yeah. And ranked choice voting now is like outlawed in the state of Idaho, and other states are trying to do this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why we're only talking about how many competitive races every year,
well,
right?
We saw that the Cook Report did this beautiful analysis about how from 1999, basically the last 25 years, it's getting cut in half, the number of competitors. Right, and that's just on the congressional level. And we're less gerrymandered there today than we have been in 10 years ago. Right,
and it takes away the incentive of working together on things, because working together on things has become kind of a dirty term. Compromise is dirty.
Can you win re-election doing that?
Compromising?
Yeah.
I actually think in some ways you can, but
Joe
you
Biden
can't.
can, but not a legislator.
Not a legislator. You can't win Twitter. Right?
Yeah.
You may not be able to win a primary. That's also a problem. But also, we do talk a lot more about where, and I'm not talking about Tennessee, I'm talking about in general. I mean,
this
Biden
is like an app analysis,
there were
too.
81 bipartisan bills his first year in office, right? That's actually pretty good.
Do it in the reverse. The only way you get anything done in Congress is if you can.
You have to
create the bipartisan.
Yes, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. But that's not.
They're actually all right about this, too. The part of it is like the intense gerrymandering too. These districts are not competitive at all, especially at the state and local level too, in these state house races. That's why if you are in a very safe district, you're listening to the same people and you're getting more and more extreme too. And having like competitive districts, not just in Congress and the congressional level, but the state and local level too, forces you as a politician to interact with different people to get their vote. Because you know, if you piss somebody off, they can get you out of office. That's the reason why. But again, it's Republicans who are doing that. Democrats want independent state commissions. It's the Democratic Party that's looking to create fairer district lines. It's not Republicans, right? And ranked choice voting is the perfect way, ranked choice voting is the perfect way to ensure that you have free and fair elections. But like he said, like Idaho, said, yeah, we're not going to have ranked choice voting. Remember Mary Poltova over in Alaska? What happened? They voted. The people of Alaska voted for ranked choice voting, and she won fair and square. I'm telling you, ranked choice voting actual independent state commissions that actually redraw these lines is the best way moving forward to protect democracy too, and making sure that elections are free and fair.
Not an easy way to.
And if IRI sees this video, I apologize. I am eating on the stream. I'm sorry. I'm hungry.
Run in a primary. It's not an easy way to win a competitive primary, and that's a part of the system that is.
And that's not who shows up to vote anymore.
Of course.
Right.
Well, and this is the other one. Now I want to pivot off to something else, because this is, if you were to, the other huge story of the week was the Wisconsin result. The numbers that are shocking to me that should really sober up some Republican strategists. One is Dane County. Madison is the second largest city in the state. Milwaukee County is the largest county and the largest city. Dane County produced more voters than Milwaukee County did. Here's second fact number 2 for you, Eugene. The Republican, or the conservative candidate, Dan Kelly, got 200,000 more votes than the last successful conservative Supreme Court candidate in Wisconsin about 3 years earlier. They had a massive surge of young voters, and they all voted one way. And if this keeps going, Republicans have a huge problem.
Yeah.
Indeed. I mean, we've seen this in, the last midterm election, the last presidential election. So it's not like Republicans haven't noticed a trend. They just haven't gotten behind just how fast this trend is moving away from them. And when you put something like abortion rights on the ballot and propose very strict restrictions on it, that is motivating to a lot of young people who fear that their rights could be, eradicated.
Danny, when you look at the polls, it seems obvious that Republicans got to move on this. But is the infrastructure of the conservative movement so tied into the pro-life movement that they don't know how to get out of this box yet?
Yes.
I don't know the answer to that, Chuck. I honestly don't. I think that the Republican Party has had a very hard time absorbing the lessons of the last 6 years. And if that continues to be the case, the people are going to explain to them what that results in. And that's what we saw in Wisconsin.
That's what democracy's supposed to do,
That's what we saw in Wisconsin. And, you don't have to give up your convictions. That's the thing. And that's when I listened to Governor Hutchinson, I was like, well, you don't have to give up your convictions, but you do actually have to compromise. You have to understand that there are views on the other side, and you have to work towards explaining. You cannot simply judge, not on one side or the other.
Very quickly, go.
I was going to say the mechanics of it, because I know these numbers are probably in your head somewhere. The early vote numbers were also a warning to Republicans, because that was such a big success story in an election that the Democrats were supposed to do so poorly in. And this was, again, a success story for them in this election. Republicans haven't quite figured out how to do that.
And this is something that your friends at AEI would love, but there is this larger issue that as Trump has remade the party into a working class party and sort of lost the college educated crowd, he has made it impossible for conservatives to win an off-year election.
Yeah.
And it's a fascinating problem. Wisconsin has been ground zero of this example over the last 3 years. Again, like I said, some of your data nerd friends at AEI.
Oh, we see it.
All right. Eugene, Jen, Danny, thank you.
Let's go.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today.
Folks, let me just take a quick break. I have made a complete mess. IRI, I'm sorry again, man. I'm going to be right back, okay? All right. My apologies, everybody. This is the reason why you don't eat on stream. Hey, you got a little Harris hair on there. Okay. All right. Let's get back at it. All right. Next up on the most roguish of heels presents to you U.S. politics.
I'm joined now by Tennessee State Senator London Lamar. She serves in the upper house in that state. She previously served in the Tennessee House and now chairs the Democratic caucus in the Senate. Sherilyn Ifill also joins me, of course, civil rights attorney, former president, director, counsel of the NAACP.
They were talking about it. Chuck Todd in that panel, they were talking about it. And I think it was Jen Psaki who talked about it too. I wonder if the congressional, no, it wasn't Jen Psaki, it was the other gentleman that was there too, with who works for Axios. He was there, and he brought it up too. I think that the Congressional Black Caucus does have to bring this up with the Attorney General's office with Merrick Garland, because come on, man, like you gotta admit, you expelled there was 3 people involved, 1 white woman and 2 black guys, and you expelled the 2 black guys. And, like, I understand, if you heard the arguments, they were so silly as to why they wouldn't expel her. Because she didn't have a bullhorn with her, she wasn't talking loudly, but her conduct was the same. Some people argue, well, her conduct wasn't the same, but you have to know how it looks. And you can say it's within their right to do it, but it's disproportionate to what they were doing. And I believe it was Justin Jones. Yes, it was Justin Jones. I forget who he was talking to, but they were talking about how prior to that, was it the speaker of that? I think they referred to that person as the speaker of the House, Republican. He was turning off like their mics when they were trying to talk about guns. They would turn off their voting machines so they couldn't vote, and they would do things. And that's not the only time I've heard about it too in state houses. It's pretty crude in state houses too, how some of these state houses are run, and it's kind of crazy too. They'll turn off their mics. They won't allow you to talk. I've seen instances where like you step away from the place you would vote, because you would have like the machine like near your desk where you vote yay or nay on, and they would vote yay for you even though you were going to vote nay, but you stepped away to grab a drink or something, or to use the restroom, and or take a call, things like that too. Like, it's crazy, and these things happen in these state houses, and you can understand, like, they had to go to the well to set where that podium is, and they had to bring attention to it too. Because if you try to go through the process over and over again, they keep screwing you out of this supposed like fair process, then you got to take it up a notch to get people's attention. And guess what? They got the nation's attention now.
Defense fund. Senator London, let me start with you. What is going through your mind as you are watching this unfold in the state capital in which you serve?
I'm right now sitting in my office just absolutely pissed at the mass display of racism that you just experienced by watching the expulsion of 2 black men who were sent here overwhelmingly voted by their district, and they expelled them for speaking out against gun violence, but they kept the white woman in office who was just as guilty of speaking out against gun violence and has displayed multiple acts of disruption and civil disobedience throughout the years that she's been here. And so what you're seeing is the GOP's fragility and the absolute disregard for democracy in our country with what they're doing with these 2 black men here in this state. 6 people died in a mass shooting last week. Black children in the city of Memphis have been dying of gun violence all year, and they refuse to do anything about it. And because they have silenced the voices of these individuals that were up for persecution today, what we're seeing now is a political lynching of people who are speaking up for victims in this state because they refuse to do something about gun violence. I am upset. This is absolutely ridiculous what they're doing to these individuals, and it is a threat to democracy from around this country.
Sherilyn, the Constitution guarantees to each state a Republican form of governance, and Republican in that phrase in the Constitution is understood by the founders as democracy, a representative form of governance. Mm-hmm. Is this allowable, what's happening?
Speak the truth, Chris.
Please excuse my voice. I'm a little under the weather, but I'm so outraged by what I witnessed today. And I've had the opportunity and the privilege over the last few days of speaking back and forth with Representative Jones. And I'm not surprised by what happened today, but I think it is such a powerful tableau that tells us precisely the moment we are at in this country. And Representative Justin Pearson just said it. We can never normalize the end of democracy. Every legislature has rules, and rules for decorum, rules for the conduct, rules for committees, and they also have sanctions for violations of those rules. And they are on a sliding scale.
That's
one can
right.
Be reprimanded, one can be censured, one can be stripped of committee assignments, which all three of these representatives were on the day of their protest. But the most extreme is expulsion, because expulsion is a sanction not just against the representative, but against the voters who voted them into office. Justin Pearson and Justin Johnson were just elected. They are in their first session. Justin Johnson was sworn in on January 10th. This is what they did to these young men who just entered the State House. And if you heard Chris, and I'm sure that your other guests can attest to this, this is part of a broader context of what has been happening in the House, the silencing of Democratic representatives, of Black representatives, and of anyone who wants to talk about serious measures around gun violence. The turning off of their mics, the speaker not acknowledging individuals to speak, calling the question before there's been debate. So what you heard today is the exposure of what has been an entirely anti-democratic practice in the Texas House, the Tennessee House, under this speaker's leadership. And what happened in that protest was the refusal of these representatives to allow their voice to be silenced, buoyed by the power of these young people who came out of school. And Representative Johnson said it today, young people, many of whom cannot yet vote, many of whom feel disenfranchised, but all of whom feel terrified.
That's
by
right.
The possibility of gun violence, particularly in their schools.
And this is something, I forget who said this too. These guys, especially now more so than millennials, they're really living with this stuff now, right? They're living with gun violence now. They have to deal with like the taking back of abortion rights for women in this country. They have to take back with not being able to afford a home, even if you have like a good paying job in the area that you live in. They have to really live with these things and deal with the consequences of the past too. And it's energizing them and it's bringing them to the forefront. You're having guys who are like, I think Pearson is like 27, 28. And I think Jones is the youngest person in that state house at like 26, 27, I believe. And they're motivating these young people to say, we can't let the adults fix this because they're not going to fix it. So we got to fix it. We got to get involved. And that's what you're seeing. These guys are getting involved now. They're getting involved in like a big way. And they're getting involved and they're getting national attention now with this. And they're going to fundraise. Bro, my Twitter feed has all been just like Pearson and Jones this entire time too. Now all eyes are on Tennessee. And I do not think, and you heard it here from Chuck Todd on this panel, this previous video that we watched, Republicans are slow on the grasp too. They're so in their bubble. They're not responding to what the majority of people want, including some of their own constituents. And they're going to lose. And they're trying to grasp at straws now. And now more so than ever, and I think it was IRI who said this too, you're beginning to see the end of the Republican Party, in my opinion. They'll win an election here or there too. It's going to be a death by 1,000 cuts. It won't be like this big implosion, but it's happening too. They're staying in their bubble. They're refusing to hear people outside of that bubble. Right? People accuse people on the far left for doing that too. And there's some truth in that too. But the people who actually run for office understand this too. And that's why they're willing to talk and be open to people about these things. But you're not seeing it. You're seeing it more so on the right now. You're seeing it more so in these state houses. And there's changes that are coming down the pike. It's not going to be immediate. It won't be anytime soon. But they are coming.
And they refuse to be silenced. But this comes as there has to be a context here of the anti-democratic way in which these representatives and others, because you heard other members of the Black Caucus say the same thing. They have been living under this circumstance in which they have not been able to speak, in which they have not been able to put issues on the agenda for committees, and now it's all been exposed today.
Senator Lamar, let me ask you, as someone who served in that body in the House, now serves in the state Senate, one thing that's striking to me is just a combination of rage and panic. There's just a strange, very volatile set of emotions and actions from the Republican majority when they have a supermajority in the House. They don't have to take up any bills that they don't want to. They could get through a few protests. Why are they acting like this? This reaction is really something to behold.
True.
I mean, they are pretty weak when it comes to their egos. If you talk about things that they don't like, if you call out racial injustice, they like to punish you because they want to silence you unless you're speaking about the issues that they deem important. This is not the first time someone's been censured. When I spoke out about racism when I was entering the state house a couple of years ago, I was the only freshman that didn't get to pass a piece of legislation because I called out racism that was used in the 2018 campaign. When I wore a shirt on the state house floor that talked about my blackness, I was silenced and I couldn't speak during the legislative session. This is not the first time their fragility when it comes to the conversation of racism has happened. What's happening today is the furthest they have ever gone. The first time in history any representative or even senator, anybody, has been reprimanded to this extent without committing any sort of criminal crime. They like to flex their power in order to silence and shut you down to make you act in a way that they deem is necessary. And this is the issue with the supermajority in Tennessee. When you don't have anyone to check your power, you can literally pass anything you want to with no repercussions. These are actions that happen. And what is happening to these two young black men is on display of the world is if you don't act the way I tell you to act, then I'm going to lynch you politically in front of the whole nature. And that's exactly what happened today.
Sherilyn, that to go back to the broader context here, this is a very aggressive gerrymander in this state along state assembly lines. Obviously, it's a very Republican state, but it's a enormous, lopsided 75-25, something in that in that range. We've seen this in Wisconsin. We've seen it in North Carolina, a state that's
it's going to change in Wisconsin soon.
There's 2/3 majorities now in both houses thanks to that gerrymander. We see it in state after state. That's part of what's facilitating this here. Even though Tennessee is a conservative state and does have a Republican, statewide office, part of what's facilitating here is the way they've drawn the districts so that they have the power to do what they're doing today.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And today was an example of an abuse of power. I do want to say a word about due process, because when you have the kind of supermajority that they have in this House, and you have a speaker willing to wield that power in the way this speaker is, then the immediate thing that falls is process. The last representative who was expelled in 2016, and this came out today, it was shocking. There was an ad hoc committee appointed to investigate the motion to expel. That investigation was brought, and all of the materials and the evidence was shared with the entire House in advance of the trial and hearing. I mean, there was a whole process that was followed. None of that happened with these young men. When I spoke with Justin Jones yesterday, he didn't even know what the process was going to be today. He didn't even know how long he would be able to talk. He didn't know how the back and forth would go. None of this was provided to these young men. And I've never seen a kind of this shocking absence of due process. But when you have this kind of supermajority and you have someone so willing to wield power in this way, this speaker, the day of the protest, tweeted the video of the protest on the floor and tagged Donald Trump and Donald Trump Jr. and Candace Owens. Like, that's who we're dealing with. That's the Speaker of the Tennessee House. And so he's willing to allow this to happen. And so these young men who have only been in this chamber for 3.5 months were escorted out, were expelled without due process, without an investigation. And there was a point today when it became clear that that was necessary. Video was introduced as evidence against these young men. It was never authenticated. It was never clear who actually took the video. It became clear that there is a rule also in the House that taking video on the House floor violates the rules. So any member who took that video also would have violated the rules.
Yep.
It also wasn't clear whether during that protest they were in recess or not in recess. You would have to go frame by frame and use timestamps to understand whether, in fact, they violated the rules during the session or whether recess had already been established. I mean, there was a lot here that needed to be investigated and perhaps going forward will be investigated if these two young men choose to challenge this legally. But this is what we watched
And they
today.
should, too.
Absolute lawlessness. A video just introduced from nowhere with no one willing to take responsibility for who took the video because they knew that it violated the rules of the House.
Fuck around and find out, Republicans. Okay. Well, I'm gonna play this video again too, but I did want to read a couple of these articles too. And yes, we're here. Actually, we can like actually listen to it too. That's actually like pretty good too. But yeah, you know what? Instead of like me talking, I'll go ahead and allow the article to talk for me, and I'll read along.
The American Bar Association wants the U.S. Supreme Court to adopt a judicial ethics code. Meeting in New Orleans on Monday, the group's 591-member policymaking body passed a resolution urging the High Court to adopt ethics rules similar to the Code of Conduct all other federal judges must follow. Concern over public perception of the court seemed to prompt the ABA action. The resolution said the absence of a clearly articulated, binding code of ethics for the justices threatens the legitimacy of the court. If the legitimacy of the court is diminished, the legitimacy of all our courts and our entire judicial system is imperiled, the resolution said. Federal judges on lower courts across the country are bound by the Code of Judicial Conduct, which maps out rules for how judges should conduct themselves on and off the bench. The code says judges should avoid impropriety and the appearance of impropriety in all activities, refrain from political activity, and recuse themselves from a case when their impartiality might be reasonably questioned because of financial interests or personal bias. Democrats have long called on the Supreme Court to adopt an ethics code. The House Judiciary Committee advanced a bill in May that would have forced the court to develop its own policy, but that legislation stalled before the full House. In his 2011 annual report, Chief Justice John Roberts said it's a misconception that the Judicial Code of Conduct applies only to lower federal courts. He said the justices consult the code in assessing ethical obligations, and it is not their only source of guidance. They may also seek advice from the court's legal office, from the Judicial Conference's Committee on Codes of Conduct, and from their colleagues, he said. For that reason, court has had no reason to adopt the Code of Conduct as its definitive source of ethical guidance. The Supreme Court, however, has dealt with a wave of ethics concerns in recent months, and public opinion plummeted after it overturned the constitutional right to abortion in June. A Marquette Law School poll last month found that public approval of the court had jumped up to 47% after hitting 38% in June, but that's still well below the 66% approval rating the court held in September 2020. The Supreme Court Press Office didn't respond to a request for comment on the ABA resolution, which also urged federal, state, local, and territorial bar associations to adopt their own resolutions pushing the High Court to take action. With assistance from Kimberly Robinson.
It was like that pause at the end. But yeah, too. So here we go. From John Roberts' own mouth, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, appointed by former President Bush, that judicial code of conduct that applies to other federal judges should also apply to the Supreme Court as well. So yes, the Supreme Court does not have its own code of conduct, nor does the current code of conduct, ethics policies, the code of conduct for United States judges. This is it right here too. And I'll add it in here for all of you to go through as well. It makes it pretty clear what it is. Does not technically apply to the United States Supreme Court. However, it should apply according to the current Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, John Roberts. All right. Moving on. This week. This one does not have a listen, so you gotta use my beautiful voice. But it's okay. I have a very smooth sounding voice. So pay attention, listen in, folks, and we are going to talk about it. We're getting a couple of good segments out of this. Is it time this is the week? Let me go ahead and just paste this in the chat. From Joel Mathis, posted April 6th of this year. Is it time for the U.S. Supreme Court to have its own code of ethics? Some Senate Democrats think so. CNN reports. Democrats want the court's funding to be tied to new requirements that justices adopt more transparent processes for recusals and for investigating ethics allegations. NPR reports the push follows an increasing drumbeat of criticism aimed at the court for perceived ethics lapses and failures to deal with them. Outside groups like the Project on Government Oversight and Lawyers Defending American Democracy have come up with a model code of conduct for the court. Such a code, NPR notes, might have kept Justice Clarence Thomas from participating in a case involving the January 6th Capitol riot, in which his wife has been implicated multiple times in. Critics say he should have recused himself from the matter. Thomas arguably had a conflict of interest because of his efforts by his wife Ginny to overturn the 2020 presidential election. The American Bar Association has also called on the court to adopt a code of ethics, Bloomberg Law reports, prompted in part by the Supreme Court's declining ratings following the overturn of Roe v. Wade. If the legitimacy of the court is diminished, the legitimacy of all of our courts and our entire judicial system is imperiled, the ABA said. So I take a sip of my coffee. Because it's not clear that justices will go along with those calls, or if some Democrats have enough muscle to turn their proposal into law. They do when they take back the House, and then we can maintain at least a 50-50 Senate this coming election year. What are the commentators saying? Supreme Court exists in ethical no man's land. Ed Pillington writes at The Guardian, justices are under no obligation to abide by a formal ethics code that has led to scandals like Thomas' involved in the January 6th case and questions about other possible conflicts of interest. Watchdog groups have discovered litany of private plane rides, dinners and gifts, attendance at politically partisan events, and inconsistencies in financial disclosures by the justices. The late Justice Antonin Scalia, for example, often came under scrutiny about who paid for his frequent hunting trips. I don't know if you've seen some of the videos, too, about people like Alito, people like Kavanaugh, and I believe Amy Coney Barrett going to the Heritage Foundation about and holding like speeches at that stuff. The liberal justices do this, too. They have lucrative speaking engagements. They get paid a lot of money to be on the court already. And no offense, I'm not a fan of that either. If I'm going to hold the Republicans and the conservatives accountable, I got to hold my folks on the court accountable as well. And I do. They should not have that. They have one job to do and one job. If afterwards they want to do that, that's fine. That's why I think term limits are good too. You go on the court, you have like a 15 to 18 year tenure on the court. You're there. When it's up, the seat's vacated. Whoever's the president has to nominate a new justice.
Okay.
Pardon me. That's a problem. Alan Neff and Carolyn Fredrickson wrote at Just Security. Erosion of confidence in the court might spread contagiously, impairing public support for and obedience to decisions of lower federal courts and state courts. That's why justices should agree to subject themselves to the same code of conduct that governs federal judges in the lower courts, and they should do it before Congress forces them to. For the court's reputation and rule of law values, the justices should prefer to put their own house in order rather than have it done for them. But an ethics code won't fix the Supreme Court's legitimacy crisis, Noah Feldman writes at Bloomberg, if only because the justices would end up enforcing it themselves. The result is that a code might encourage politicized harassment of the justices without truly subjecting them to any real source of external authority. The court's declining approval rating isn't a result of judges taking plane rides. It's a result of a massive shift to the right. Only sound, Careful interpretation of the Constitution can reverse the slide caused by the current court's reactionary overreach. And that's only going to happen when this side of the aisle, when my side of the aisle, the left side of the aisle, takes power. The Supreme Court isn't entirely free of rules. The Washington Post reports that new regulations quietly adopted this month now require all federal judges, including the justices, to provide a fuller public accounting of free trips, meals, and other gifts they accept from corporations or other organizations. The new rules are less stringent than similar reporting requirements faced by Congress, but Senator Sheldon Whitehouse said they represent a little but real victory for critics to raise the court's ethical requirements. Further progress might also have to be achieved incrementally, Raymond J. Mikowski writes at The Hill. That's partly because sticky, contentious questions persist concerning which rules govern lower court judges are appropriate for members of the Supreme Court. Those questions include debates about whether justices should receive awards, accept book deals, or speak at fundraisers for charitable groups. A piece-by-piece approach to ethics reforms might be easier to push than a broader, more sweeping effort. It is time to take the first step in enacting a Supreme Court Code of Ethics. The court might indeed choose to adopt some version of Code of Ethics rather than wait for it to be imposed, the New York Times reports. The topic remains a subject and consideration at the core. A subject of study and consideration at the core, but there are reasons to be skeptical. Justice Elena Kagan, 2019, told Congress a code might be on the way. That has pros and cons, I'm sure, she said, but it's something that is being thought very seriously about. 4 years later, it still hasn't materialized. That's true, because she enjoys it too. And she's not free from critique, because more often than not, I agree with her opinions and her interpretation of the law. But she also benefits too. And you do see that quite often. Let's see. I think we got... This is something else entirely that I want to take a look at too. So I'll go ahead. But I want you guys to take a look at this. This is the model code. Sorry, this is the actual, these canons here are the model code for all the lower court federal judges. That's everybody below the Supreme Court. So I posted that in chat too. And for everybody else too, I have from the New York courts, their model code as well. All of it here. So I'll share it here with you, my home state. But other jurisdictions, like Texas, for example, they have it in this convenient PDF here. Texas has it. Hell, even the state of Alabama has it. So let's not pretend that these canons or these rules can't be subjected to the highest court in the country. They can't, and they should be as well. This is a problem, okay? This is a problem when you have a current sitting Supreme Court justice choosing to hear a case where his spouse is implicated in, and I'll use the words carefully, in alleged insurrection against the current government, okay? I Googled all this before stream too. This is not like something that's hidden. You can Google this stuff. Other state courts, the state courts have codes of conduct. I don't see why the Supreme Court needs to be special in that regard. Okay, so now let's go ahead and play the video.
Tough time waiting for this segment tonight, because one thing you can rely on in this hour, we follow the money. And tonight, we are following Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, who is at the center of yet another controversy. ProPublica is out with blockbuster reporting on his friendship with Dallas real estate tycoon and Republican megadonor Harlan Crow. ProPublica reports Thomas has accepted mega luxury trips from Crow basically every year for more than 20 years without disclosing them. That reportedly includes flights on a private jet,
we'll see if anything happens from this
super yacht, and stays at both Crow's ranch in Texas and private resort in the Adirondacks. Clarence Thomas did not respond to ProPublica's list of detailed
He
questions,
won't.
and NBC News has not independently confirmed this reporting. Crow said in a statement that he has never sought to influence Justice Thomas. Joining me now is one of the all-star reporters behind this story. I am blown away.
He so he gave it out of goodness of his own heart. He didn't expect anything from Clarence Thomas whatsoever. He's just my boy, Clarence and me, we go way back, we love conservatism, we don't believe women should have the right to choose what they do with their own bodies too, and we're gonna make it exceedingly difficult for them to gain an abortion, even if that means they have to travel 2-3 states over to get an abortion.
By the level of detail in this. Justin Elliott, he covers politics and government accountability for ProPublica. This thing is extraordinary. You point out one of these trips could have cost over $500,000, okay? Over 500 grand for a vacation paid for by a mega donor, and Clarence Thomas didn't disclose it. Have we ever seen anything like this from a Supreme Court justice?
We had that question, and we actually put it to some Supreme Court historians, and they hadn't heard of anything quite like this. I mean, there was a scandal back in the 1960s that actually led to the resignation of a Supreme Court justice involving a cash retainer of only $20,000. So no one we talked to had heard of any kind of relationship like this, and we were shocked as we were doing the reporting of just the lavishness of this travel, as you described. I mean, the private jet we're talking about, it's a Bombardier Global 5000. These things rent for anywhere between $10,000 to $15,000 per hour. So if you're flying to Indonesia, like one of these flights that Clarence Thomas took with Harlan Crow, the donor, that could be a multi-$100,000 flight alone.
But here's the thing that will cause people to set their hair on fire. As unethical or reprehensible as this may be, if it's true, is it technically against the rules? Did Clarence Thomas, was he required to disclose it?
We looked at that question very closely with ethics lawyers, and they told us yes. He had. There's a law that was passed back in the 1970s after the Watergate scandal that covers Supreme Court justices, that requires them to report gifts on their annual financial disclosures. And it might sound technical, but the reason for that law is so members of the public, in this case people with business at the court, can assess potential conflicts of interest, can look at these influence questions. And what these ethics experts told us is that certainly the flights and the cruises on the yacht should have been disclosed, and they weren't. So barring some information that we don't have at this point, they said these are apparent violations of that law.
Now let's talk about the influence. What do we know? What do
Get
you
him
know
out, Biden.
about Harlan Crow? Has Clarence Thomas heard any cases that Crow has a stake in?
No direct cases that we've found that Crow has a stake in. One of the interesting things about the Supreme Court is it just doesn't actually take that many cases where there are named litigants. But what we know about Crow, besides the fact that he does have a lot of financial interests in the real estate industry, and the Supreme Court does rule on cases that matter a lot for the industry. But I think more relevant for this story is that Harlan Crow has been involved for many years funding conservative legal organizations that are, advocating for various conservative legal theories. We also found in our reporting that some activists and lawyers from that world were actually on some of these trips with Justice Thomas, and so it's really an open question what's being talked about in these vacations. I mean, these are very private settings, private jet. A yacht with a crew of people that are sort of taking care of your every need. So it's not easy to report this out. So we're still very interested in that question. And as you said, Harlan Crow did tell us in a statement that he's never sought to influence Justice Thomas, but very, very difficult to verify that independently.
I know I'm out of time. That was in Crow's statement. What did Clarence Thomas's office say to you? You said they didn't answer your questions, but what did they do?
Almost nothing at all. It actually took a lot of work even to get the Supreme Court folks that do that work to even acknowledge that we'd sent them questions. So absolutely no response from Justice Thomas before or after publication at this point.
Well, here's what I can tell you. They're all talking about it tonight. Justin Elliott, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your patience.
We'll see if anything's going to be done. I mean, we're coming to like a flashpoint for our democracy at this point, man. And this is just like more and more questions are like coming up too, and it's showing that it's working for a small group of people. It ain't working that well for the rest of us, and it seems like we need to start taking like real action now to get this done.
You're a Wisconsin native. Your family's been there for generations. Why was this election so critical?
Well, it was an election for control of a branch of government. And if you go all the way back to 2011, when Scott Walker came in, Republicans had control of the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. They used that control of the judicial branch to approve all of the abuses that they committed in the other two branches. So the judiciary in Wisconsin has become a really big deal. It was, as you note, a 4-3 conservative majority. On Tuesday, it flipped to a 4-3 liberal majority. And as you're suggesting here,
good job, Wisconsin Dems.
Central to that election was the issue of abortion. And abortion rights was a huge issue in this race because the liberal candidate, Janet Protasiewicz, said from the start of her campaign that she was going to talk about her values. And one of her values was a woman's right to choose.
Right. I interviewed her on the Sunday show, and she made that exact point. But, you know, John, after President Obama was reelected in 2012, there was a Republican autopsy that concluded, to quote Politico, the party would rebrand as a kinder, more inclusive GOP. John, how did the Republican Party go from that to Donald?
Well, I would argue that Scott Walker in Wisconsin started to clear the way for that change. Walker and the Republicans in Wisconsin assaulted voting rights. They assaulted labor unions. They gerrymandered the maps. They used their power in an extreme and abusive way. And I think that opened up kind of a new stream within the Republican Party that Trump picked up on. What we really need to understand is that at core, the problem in Wisconsin for now a dozen years has been those legislative maps, which gave so much power to the Republicans that even when Democrats won the most votes statewide, they didn't advance in the legislature. So now this court, this new court, has the potential to address those maps along with a host of other issues like abortion rights and labor rights.
But after what we saw in Tennessee this week, are Democrats in Wisconsin preparing for this new judge, Judge Protasiewicz, to be impeached?
There's been talk of that, but I think it's highly unlikely. This is an important thing to understand. The Republicans do now have, because of a special election, a supermajority in the state Senate. Therefore, if the state House were to impeach, the state Senate could convict. So you have that outside possibility. But here's the important thing to understand. The Republican leaders in the state Senate have said they don't want to go there. And they're smart to say that. If they tried this, it would blow up on them in all sorts of ways politically, just as things blew up on them on April 4th. And there's one other subtlety to remember, Jonathan. If the Republicans removed Janet Protasiewicz, the liberal Democratic governor of Wisconsin, Tony Evers, would replace that removed justice. So the bottom line is that the Republicans, I don't think they'll go to impeachment, but as Tennessee teaches us, they are constantly looking for some way to disempower anybody that gets in the way of their power grabs.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. It all gets back to and circled around too. It all gets back to that. I knew the minute he started talking about impeachment, I knew it was going to get back to Tennessee. And guess what, folks? It went back to Tennessee again because it's all getting pointed out now and it's all happening out in sunshine. What's the old saying? Sunshine's the best disinfectant? Well, boy, oh boy, we're going to disinfect the Republican Party from American politics slowly but surely. And he's right about that too. If they do somehow impeach, Janet Protasiewicz, who's the governor? Tony Evers. What's his party affiliation? Democrat. He can then choose who to replace that person with. Who's he going to replace that person with? A liberal. Fucking morons.
When Republicans gathered in January for their first party meeting since their big red wave for the midterms became a big red puddle, they adopted this resolution, quote, affirming the Republican National Committee's commitment to life, end quote. They specifically gave this prescription for the next election cycle, quote, go on offense in the 2024 election cycle and expose the Democrats' extreme position of supporting abortion on demand, end quote. Go on offense. Now, that marching order might come as a surprise to anyone who thinks that the Republican-induced fall of Roe v. Wade is the force that shook the 2022 midterm elections. But regardless, Republicans resolved to double down with more anti-abortion legislation, more anti-abortion candidates.
Yep.
This week, one lawmaker in Idaho described what that posture looks like for the actual humans, including voters in her states, which just banned out-of-state travel for abortion for minors.
I think my mom would say that she paid it forward, all that she and my dad did for us, and I want to do that for my grandkids. But I can't encourage my two daughters to settle in Idaho with the laws we have on the books. I would be terrified to have my daughters try to carry a pregnancy here. This is not a safe place to be pregnant. I think this statute is tearing families apart.
Fueling that lawmaker's concern about being able to be there both for her aging parents and her future grandchildren was Idaho's new law creating a crime called abortion trafficking. It means that if you help a person younger than 18 years old travel for an abortion procedure or to pick up abortion medication without permission from a parent or guardian, you could face jail time. If you're an aunt or an uncle or a grandmother trying to help your pregnant relative, you could go to jail. Today in Texas, a woman is burying her premature daughter after only 33 weeks of pregnancy. 20 weeks into her pregnancy, the woman learned that her fetus had a fatal condition. The brain and skull would never develop. The baby would not survive long after birth. Her doctor told her, well, because of the new law, you don't have any options. You have to go on with your pregnancy. Her newborn died just 4 hours after being born. In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis is expected to soon sign a 6-week abortion ban after the state Senate approved the bill this week, despite fierce public opposition. The chamber had to pause debate on the bill for about 10 minutes as protesters screamed, "People will die." And that's just the thing. Even just in the state of Florida, this kind of legislation is not popular. Most Floridians disapprove of the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision. Recent polling shows 64% of Americans believe abortion should be legal in most cases. Voters largely back abortion rights. Just take a look at the Wisconsin Supreme Court election this Tuesday. Liberal-aligned Judge Janet Protasiewicz trounced her more conservative
Why don't you take a look at this? That's a lot. Look at the numbers. That's a lot. In a state Supreme Court race.
Opponent in a race of the open seat on the state's highest court. Protasiewicz has been outspoken about her support for abortion rights. Her defeated opponent expressed his opposition to abortion. He lost by 11 points. As Michelle Goldberg writes in a new piece for the New York Times titled "The Abortion Ban Backlash is Starting to Freak Out Republicans," quote, you can't message away forced birth. Republicans' political problem is twofold. Their supporters take the party's position on abortion seriously, and now, post-Roe, so does everyone else.
Yep. Fuck around and find out. Bruh, this is like so stupid. Like, their support. The problem is there's a lot of money behind the Republican Party. We think we all know that too. And the money that backs the Republican Party, those people are fucking nuts. Like, they're extreme. Like, there's some extreme people at the base level who are diehard supporters who will vote red all the time. Vote, but as long as that person has an R next to them, they'll vote for that person. But the money's pretty extreme, and they have a vision for this country that is incompatible with the rest of us, and they're forcing their beliefs on everybody else by putting Republicans in power too. And guys like Peter Thiel come to mind too, but there's other people who kind of hide their name behind the scenes because you don't really know them too. That guy who's giving Clarence Thomas all those lavish gifts, he's one of them. It's no coincidence that some thought leaders in the conservative movement coincidentally go on the same trip as Clarence Thomas does. This is not like a complex mathematical equation. They use their money to bring in these thought leaders to influence people in power. And those people in power like the money, they like the prestige, they like the quote-unquote clout, they like all these nice things that they're getting, and it's just so they can bend the knee and do the things that the moneyed interests want. And a lot of these money interests, and I'll say it again, I'll say it over again, they're fucking nuts. They make you think that they're your best friend. No. They want you dumb, they want you docile, they want you to have little rights as possible, because the only thing you're good for, the good old working class Dick and Jane, is to make sure that the rich stay rich. This isn't some like leftist thing. This is proven time and time again. They want you to vote for their candidates. If their candidates say they'll do all these shit for you, they won't do anything for you. They do everything for them.
Judge Kaczmarek released his ruling just a few hours ago. The judge ruled tonight that the FDA's approval of mifepristone in 2000 was wrong. He's temporarily invalidated that approval from 20 plus years ago. So as of tonight, this judge says mifepristone is no longer FDA approved for nationwide distribution. The judge has also decided that his order will not go into effect for another 7 days from now, giving the conservative Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals and the United States Supreme Court the opportunity to stay Kaczmarek's order. The Biden White House has long indicated that it would promptly appeal any ruling that reverses mifepristone's FDA approval. And tonight, just before airtime, Attorney General Merrick Garland issued this statement, quote, "The Justice Department strongly disagrees with the decision and will be appealing the court's decision and seeking a stay pending appeal. The department is committed to protecting Americans' access to legal reproductive care," end quote. So we're going to watch to see how the Biden administration responds to this ruling tonight. But a judge in Washington State may just have provided another route for mifepristone to reach the Supreme Court quickly. Tonight, that federal judge, same level and rank as the judge in Texas, issued an injunction prohibiting the FDA from removing...
Okay, so I wasn't sure. So it's two competing injunctions that do the opposite. The judge in Washington says you can't not sell it. The judge in Texas says you can't sell it.
Mifepristone from the market in 18 states.
It's fucking nuts.
Now that ruling...
This is all from the Dobbs decision, by the way. This is all because of one Supreme Court decision that you have all this chaos. And this is what we've been talking about too. You have all these state legislatures, these radical Republican state legislatures saying, oh, we're not going to do it. We'll have all these exceptions. What exceptions? What exceptions? You have competing federal court injunctions now. Judges and courts at the same level giving competing and opposite rulings regarding one drug. Look at all this chaos now. This has material effects on people's lives. And ladies, I'm sorry. Trans people, I am sorry. You're going to have to deal with this for a little while. I am so very sorry that you're going through all this. Bear with us, okay? Just bear with this country a little bit longer. I know it's going to be uncomfortable for a while. It's going to get better, I promise you that. This is all from one Supreme Court decision. Elections matter, people. All you people, all you burning your busters that fucking refuse to vote Hillary Clinton because you fucking hated her guts because she wasn't Bernie Sanders. Elections matter. You think Hillary Clinton would have put 3 far-right justices on the court? You would have had a supremely liberal court. And yes, liberals cringe, liberals soy, what the fuck ever. You think that they would have overturned Roe v. Wade? You think you would be having problems like this? You think that we would have issues with Clarence Thomas not recusing himself when it involved January 6 people, when his wife's been implicated in that incident? You think we would have had that problem? No, we wouldn't have had that problem, you dumb shits. I'm so sick and tired of you far lefties. You guys talk, refuse to compromise on anything, refuse to see a path forward with anything too. And you guys are so absolutist. You are the same as the far right is in a lot of aspects too. I might agree with you on a lot of what you want, but boy, oh boy, you guys are just as extreme as the people on the right too. And there's a reason why there's like this huge pendulum swing to the right online, especially because culturally The left won. You guys won culturally. But the problem is, too, now, if no one is ideologically pure with you on every single point, canceled. Then they end up like Aiden Ross, unironically enough, in Sneeko.
Is in direct conflict with the
Fucking
ruling from
morons.
Judge Kaczmarek in Texas. So where do we go from here? As the whole country grapples with this major access issue, what does the FDA do now? What does the federal government do now? And I know just who to ask. Joining us now are Minnie Timaraju, the president of NARAL Pro-Choice America, and Laura Jarrett, NBC News senior correspondent. Minnie and Laura, thanks for joining us tonight. Laura, let me just start with you. We've just had this response from the Department of Justice. And even before we had that, we have this thing that we don't normally see. On the same day, minutes apart from each other, competing rulings that are applicable to the same agency.
Yes, and arguably in conflict, but perhaps not in conflict everywhere. That's one of the issues, is how is the FDA supposed to abide by both of these rulings? Kaczmarek obviously put his out first, essentially saying the FDA, you do not have the authority to do this. I'm putting it on hold. However, I'm not going to give the plaintiffs exactly what they wanted, because what they wanted was a nationwide injunction immediately. And so instead he's saying, I'm going to give the Justice Department a little bit of time to get its ducks in a row and try to go to the Fifth Circuit, the Court of Appeals, and try to get
one of the most conservative circuits in the country, by the way, the Fifth Circuit.
Put on hold. So as of right now, people should understand this drug is still in circulation. It's not being removed from the market. I think it's important for our audience to understand that. However, as you pointed out, then a different judge just minutes later says, no, wait a minute. Actually, the drug should stay in circulation. It should maintain the status quo. So for instance, what happens if in 8 days from now, Judge Kaczmarek in Texas, his order actually goes into effect? So in a place like, for instance, Illinois, which is a party to the Washington lawsuit, what is the FDA supposed to do? How is it supposed to comply with both of those orders? And that's why the Justice Department is, this case is almost immediately headed to the Supreme Court, because it's going to have to reconcile these things.
Minnie, I want to just ask the practical question first, because one can't pre-plan an abortion, but one can pre-plan to have mifepristone. Should people be getting it now? Should they be talking to their doctors and hanging on to it? It is a particularly safe drug. I do pre-plan my Tylenol stocking in my house.
You know, Americans should be pre-planning their reproductive health care, absolutely. Stock up on Plan B, the morning after pill, but yes, on mifepristone. In fact, Washington State, in anticipation of this, they filed that case. Their AG, they've been stockpiling mifepristone too. It's an important point, Allie, because look, in these times, you need to make sure you're ready and you're prepared to protect yourself. And we know mifepristone has been safe for over 2 decades. It's safer than Tylenol, and it's been a critical way to get very safe access to abortion care, regardless of where you're at. But I think the most important thing that I want to make sure folks understand about this case is this was an effort at a backdoor national abortion ban. Opponents of abortion have not been able to pass a national abortion ban. Supreme Court could only ban abortion in states.
That's a good point, too, by the way. I didn't even think about that. This is like a backdoor way to basically shut the door on abortion, to have like a nationwide abortion ban too. But the thing is, that's just one way to do it, but then they'll find another way to do it, and then another way. This is them like continuously pulling at the levers to see which lever is going to stick now too. They can't do it legislatively because they know not even Republicans in Congress, especially in the Senate, are dumb enough to do that, because they know the backlash it would give them too, and they would lose, all of them would lose their seats like that. So they do it this way.
That were willing to do so, and this was a way for them to get at abortion access, the most popular, effective, and safe abortion access in all 50 states. You pointed that out. It's very alarming, and it is the core issue, I think, at this moment.
Laura, what's the reasoning behind the argument that the FDA doesn't have the authority to approve this drug? I thought the FDA has authority to approve drugs.
It's really more that they went about it the wrong way. It's not that the FDA doesn't have the authority to approve drugs. It does that every day. And I don't think that the plaintiffs, I don't think their argument is really that. I think their argument is more, you didn't take into account the safety concerns that we have.
You want to know who the plaintiff's attorney is, I believe?
And the judge
It's
has
Josh
bought
Hawley's
into that
wife.
wholesale. This opinion is chock through of language that makes it very clear the judge is totally on their side in that regard, on that issue and a number of other issues. But obviously, the Justice Department has put forth a litany of evidence to suggest that this drug is safe and effective, and it has said basically you don't get to second guess the FDA's authority on that. Again, this has never been done before. It has never been the case that a federal judge has essentially told the FDA what to do about a drug that it thinks is safe over the objections of the FDA.
Interestingly enough, Minnie, the FDA doesn't take other countries' research when it comes to drugs. It conducts its own research on every drug that is released. But this drug, I believe, was invented in France in, maybe I'm making this up, but 1980 or something. Like, it's been a long, long time, and it is widely used across Europe, and its efficacy and safety have both been heavily researched and proved.
Yes, there were extensive trials when this was first introduced in the United States. The reason why, and you pointed it out in your intro, this case finally got airtime with Matthew Kacsmaryk. He is a Trump-appointed judge. He is an extremist with ties to extremely conservative evangelical organizations like Liberty Institute. This organization, as you said, they created a new organization in Amarillo just to get in front of him because there have been efforts for decades to undermine the FDA's authority here, but it's been tested, it's been trialed, it's been on the market for over 2 decades. So look, at the end of the day, that may have not been the intent of the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine, the organization that was made up to file this case to undermine the FDA, but it's so important to note that that is exactly what would happen. And even if you don't care about abortion, and we know the majority of Americans do care abortion and are with us on this issue, including 49% of Republicans are with us and wanting to see medication abortion approved. Even if you don't care about abortion, the fact that this would undermine decades of FDA authority is chilling and should affect every single American. Everyone should be outraged. We've seen really strong statements from the DOJ, the president, the vice president, the Democrats in Congress. And I think it's really important to note that Dem AGs and Dem governors are already saddled up and ready to fight. And it's going to be really critical what happens in the next couple of weeks.
Right. The Dem AGs are the ones who actually brought that case in Washington. Laura, I don't like to wade into your lane, but there was something interesting that the judge said, Judge Kacsmaryk. He said the FDA has faced significant political pressure to, quote, increase access to chemical abortion, what we're calling medication abortion. It's almost like he was saying part of his ruling was to give the FDA cover from what he says is the pressure that they are facing to increase access.
I'd like to see his evidence.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know how that works.
It's interesting. You know, a lot of these arguments are not even arguments that the plaintiffs' groups made.
Right.
You know, at the hearing on this weeks ago, he was almost offering different arguments, ways to knock this down that the groups themselves hadn't even put forth. It's just interesting how
someone
much,
can find. I need to find a transcript of that too.
From the judge on some of these issues. Obviously,
if there is a transcript of it,
I'm the judge, and I think I got the law right. It doesn't matter if the plaintiffs got the argument wrong, but typically the plaintiffs have to be the one to raise the issue in the first instance.
That's why I thought that was strange. He was sort of offering them sort of a fig leaf. Minnie, without mifepristone, there's a second drug. It's generally given in a 2-drug cocktail for slightly different purposes. Mifepristone was initially approved for a different purpose when it was first invented. Without the access to mifepristone, the second drug can still work. Tell me about that, its efficacy, and why it hasn't been targeted the same way.
Yeah, actually, we were surprised it hasn't been targeted the same way, and I think we should be worried and paying attention to make sure it's not up next. But misoprostol is the second drug. You can have an all misoprostol protocol for abortion. It is definitely still available, and we want to make sure folks know that they can request that drug as well, the same way you said folks can go out and talk to their doctors about making sure they have access to mifepristone, particularly in the next week. That being said, we believe firmly Americans and doctors and providers should have the right to provide any kind of medication abortion or any kind of abortion care that is legally required, that is legally allowed. Mifepristone is the most popular because the mifepristone and misoprostol cocktail, as you said, is frankly the most, it's the easiest. It is the least painful. It is the most comfortable for the majority of patients, if that makes sense. And it is the preferred protocol by the majority of providers. So look, technically, yes, you can still get a medication abortion care after this decision, should there not be a stay. That being said, we should have the right to have access to the best protocol for us, for our bodies, that our providers want us to have. And
Cheers
this
to
is
that.
the most popular procedure, the most popular care in abortion care, over 50%. And
Yes.
the fact that it's being taken away in this manner is, frankly,
You should be
a threat
concerned.
to abortion care
Outside
and a
of
threat to
like
reproductive
the
freedom.
women who are outside the women that are directly affected by this too, I want you to take this into account too. Do you remember some time ago when there was a leak of the Dobbs decision and Republicans were doing damage control and they were basically accusing the liberal judges of leaking it too? It was Sam Alito, by the way. No one confirmed it, but it was Sam Alito, right? And they're accusing of like leftist judges on the Supreme Court and other courts, as lower courts, federal courts, of being judicially active, right? They're not doing what the law is on the books too. What did this judge do? You just heard it from Ari there too. Is this Ari? I forget. God, there's so many fucking people here. Yeah, this is Ari. All right, yeah, all right, I got it right. Too, like what Ari said there too. He essentially, and Laura too, the legal correspondent for MSNBC there, said it as well, that the judge was essentially making the argument for the plaintiffs in this case. So when he made the decision finally, he's arguing that he got the law right, but the judge has to make the decision based on the arguments presented by both the plaintiff and the defendant. The plaintiffs never made these arguments too. So when we're talking about judicial activism, the liberal judges aren't doing it, right? Even though the cons, the Republicans, what have you, and the far right want to tell you that we're doing it, in reality, they're doing it too. They're projecting, is the word. They're projecting it. So you have a judicial activist on the court making arguments for the plaintiff in this case, so he can get the result that he wants, so he can ruin the lives of women in this country, because he believes that there should be no right to abortion whatsoever. There should be no contraceptives, I imagine, too. If you look into some of the groups that were mentioned in this, too, you'll see how far right they are, too, and how incompatible they are with how people are at the moment and what their beliefs are at the moment in this country as well. They do not care about you at all. They say that people on the left want activist judges on the court. I wish we had activist judges on the court so we can have decisions counter and contrary to this decision here too. But the right, more often than not, they have activists on the court. They want activists on the court too, and you have an activist on the court in the highest court in the United States, Supreme Court. So they project. They don't want activists, but they'll gladly put their own activists on the court.
And the nature of this case and the fact that it got in front of this one specific judge in this very, very problematic way is an overall indictment on our courts, and overall raises a lot of questions about judicial ethics that we're going to dig into with our friends in Congress in the next coming weeks.
I just think it's worth noting, it's not just about abortions. Mifepristone is used to manage miscarriages, right? And so it's sort
Right
of,
there.
these decisions sort of expose the slippery line
Interesting.
between how we
Right.
talk about abortions and how we talk about managing miscarriages. But we talked to doctors leading up to when we thought this decision might come out weeks ago, and one of them told me, look, like, more women are going to die as a result of this because you can't manage abortions properly. You get infections, you get sepsis.
Right.
We've all seen the horror stories. And so it's just worth noting, I think, for the judge, this is, he's obviously couching it in the terms of abortion, and
Right.
that's certainly how these groups have styled it and certainly what they're interested in. But for many, many women who have taken mifepristone to manage miscarriages,
Right.
this disrupts their access
Well,
as
all
well.
through a big block of states in the South, a miscarriage now makes every woman and their doctor fear that they might get prosecuted if they're having a miscarriage. There are women who won't seek the care for a miscarriage because they're worried that there's someone looking to
And
prosecute
doctors
them.
who won't prescribe the drugs because they're worried about getting sued.
They don't give a fuck about you. I'll say that time and time again. The Republicans don't give a fuck about you.
Federal judge in Texas. And
the firebrand, Alexandria Ocasio. Congresswoman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Validating FDA approval of mifepristone, a widely used drug in medication abortion. Speaking at the airport in Nashville, here's her initial response.
So the district court in the abortion medication decision came down today. I haven't read it yet, so I'm going to do an analysis of it. But as a general matter, I'll say that there is no question that the president and I are going to stand with the women of America and do everything we can to ensure that women have the ability to make decisions about their health care, their reproductive health care, in a manner that is what they need, and they decide that, not their government.
More reaction now to that, and a separate ruling in Washington State on the same drug going in the opposite direction, all of it likely headed to the Supreme Court. Joining us, New York Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
It just depends how long it takes to get up there, too. They're going to hear the case. I'm confident about that. I just wonder when they're going to put it on their calendar. Because I think it has to go through the... it's going to go through the Fifth Circuit. Fifth Circuit's the most conservative circuit of all 13 judicial circuits. So we'll see what happens there. They're going to uphold the that Texas judge ruling. So we'll see what happens.
Thanks so much for being with us. When you've heard the news this afternoon, a couple hours ago, what did you think?
Well, you know, I think rulings like this, and I think we've seen from the FDA and also from activity in Congress, that some of these rulings, I think we've been preparing and anticipating for there being these egregious overreaches by members of the judiciary appointed by a right-wing Republican Party whose goal for a very long time was to just pack these courts with partisan judges, often underqualified or completely unqualified for their role. And
Preach, sister.
There has been thought, I believe, given to this. Senator Ron Wyden has already issued statements, for example, advising what we should do in a situation like this, which I concur, which is that I believe that the Biden administration should ignore this ruling. I think that the courts have the legitimacy and they rely on the legitimacy of their rulings. And what they are currently doing is engaged in an unprecedented and dramatic erosion of the legitimacy of the courts. It is the justices themselves, through the deeply partisan and unfounded nature of these rulings, that are undermining their own enforcement.
So you're saying the Biden administration should ignore this court, but what does that look like? What does that actually mean?
You know, I think the interesting thing when it comes to a ruling is that it relies on enforcement. And it is up to the Biden administration to choose whether or not to enforce such a ruling.
But do we want to live in a world where a government can decide to ignore a federal court ruling?
Well, no, of course. I mean, I do think that it raises these important questions. And I do think that when we look at, and there are serious questions that the FDA and the Biden administration is going to have to figure out and how exactly we map this out. But on the other hand, what we are also seeing is a power grab over our courts in which the laws passed by Congress and the rules and policies passed by the executive branch now are going to require unanimous consent from 650 district court judges, many of which are appointed with even, the American Bar Association saying that they're completely unfit for the role.
It is one of the things sort of that a lot of people didn't pay that much attention to during the Trump administration because there were so many bizarre things going on every day. But Mitch McConnell was, getting judges appointed to the bench who were the most conservative judges possible.
And they weren't just conservative, they were completely unqualified. And, the American Bar Association, along with many other organizations,
and when she says like they were unqualified, they were truly like unqualified. Like there were some of them weren't even lawyers. They never even practiced like a lick of law.
issue recommendations or assessments. Oftentimes, some of them are nonpartisan about how qualified a candidate may be to be nominated for the bench. And many of them were completely unqualified. And Republicans knowingly put these folks on the bench because the between nominations with the Federalist Society and other organizations knew that they would get outcomes like these. And this is an effort to really subvert the will of the American people who elect their legislators and who elect their leaders to enact the policies that they are accountable to.
I understand, people having differences of opinions on matters like this, religious differences, whatever it may be. What's interesting to me of this judge, though, the arguments he's making, I mean, we just spoke to that physician, the arguments he's making about the medical concerns just do not stand up to the facts.
And that is exactly what makes this ruling different. This is not about a case where a judge is calling balls and strikes on what is within the bounds of the law.
The famous, if you want to know why a lot of people are using that phrase, Chief Justice Roberts, I remember watching that when I was in college. His when his nomination, when he was in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee during that nomination process, he said his famous quote was, "A judge calls balls and strikes." That's fucking bullshit. Let's just call it the way it is. They call more than balls and strikes. Okay, they interpret the law, and their interpretations of the law and the decision that they finally hand down from that majority has severe ramifications for decades on. It does, and I'm sorry, a judge does more than just call balls and strikes. At whatever level, they make a decision that can affect, in this case, in the Supreme Court, millions upon millions of people's lives. In the smallest case, it's whether or not a motherfucker goes to jail or not in a state criminal court. But that's bullshit. They do more than just call balls and strikes. It's fun to use that phrase because it's that buzzword a conservative justice actually said, but a judge does more than call balls and strikes.
Law and not. Mifepristone has been legal and in the market for 23 years.
And it's not as if there's some new study that has come out and said, oh my gosh, this is actually...
This is like someone coming out and a judge just coming out and outlining Claritin or aspirin or Plan B because they felt like it. I mean, the contents of this judge's ruling is frankly shocking, and it should be appalling to anyone who practices law because it is so unfounded. It is insulting, I believe, to any
And it was in that MSNBC video, too, that I just thought about, too. She said that their correspondent was her name, Laura Jarrett. She specifically said the judge now is countering the FDA's ruling that the drug is safe, even though the FDA is the agency that is specifically tasked to determine whether or not a drug can be determined to be safe. So how can a judge make that determination when the agency that is specifically tasked, and that's the only task FDA does, to determine whether or not a drug is safe? Probably has other tasks, but that's his primary task. How can a judge then say that based on opinions that were never actually given to the judge from the plaintiff? Because remember, the plaintiff did not make a lot of the arguments that the judge ruled in his order. The judge made those arguments. It was almost feeding the plaintiff the arguments that the judge wanted so that the judge can make that determination. So I find that funny, and I find that very telling as to what is allowed under the law for this particular judge. As long as the judge believes it, he'll allow it. If the judge doesn't believe it, goes into the toilet. So I wonder if there's a counter to that too, legally speaking. How can you overrule the determination of an agency whose primary goal is to make that determination as to whether or not a drug is safe to use? I don't know.
Law, because it is pure conjecture. Pure conjecture. As you mentioned, there is no medical evidence. There is no new study. This is a ruling that happened because they could and because they wanted to.
So when you see Vice President Harris saying, we're going to do everything we can to stand, to stop this, to stand with women, you're saying that they should just ignore this judge?
I think what we need to see here, and we saw, and there is precedent for this, and the precedent for it escalated in the Supreme Court back, 100 years ago when there were these mounting pressures with then FDR and the Supreme Court, where there was concern about the Supreme Court truly expanding its reach and abusing its power. And when we have a system of checks and balances, there is the question of who is the check on the Supreme Court. You have the check on the presidency, you have the check on Congress through veto power, and you have the check on the presidency with overriding. You have the check on both with the Supreme Court and ruling in their rulings. But what is the check on the Supreme Court? And that is up to the President of the United States and Congress.
I want to ask you about what we saw in Tennessee last night. 3 legislators who took part in a protest on the floor of the State House, not with protesters, but out on the actual floor. They had a bullhorn, clearly a violation of the rules of decorum. Not something legislators normally do or would, make sense to have legislators do for good order of actually hearing people's arguments. That being said, the punishment for 2 of them
we already talked about how the Republicans in the House have prevented a lot of the Democratic legislators, actually preventing them from doing just that, from being able to communicate with them too. And we know that's bullshit. And I imagine in the coming days and weeks, we're going to get even more concrete examples of this. I promise you that we're going to get that.
To be expelled. How do you see that? Do you think that really was about the rules of decorum or something else?
We know that it absolutely was not. We know that, and there is precedent for this, while protest is not a normal occurrence on the House floor, it happens all the time. We saw John Lewis lead a sit-in on the floor of the United States Congress. You saw the unseeming behavior from House Republicans, even during the State of the Union, yelling and hooting and hollering.
Yes.
From the National Republican Party during the President's State of the Union. Were these people expelled? Was there even an ethics, question brought up to this? No, there was not.
There was a shush.
There was a shush, right. And so what we're also seeing here, and there are so many levels before expulsion, naturally. There's even censure. There is striking the word.
What was it about?
Pardon?
What was it about?
I think this is about the fascist takeover of our state houses that Republicans have invested in the last several decades.
Never be afraid to use the F word, folks.
This is about disenfranchising. This is about disenfranchising Democrats in states where there is extreme levels of voter suppression. And it was also about racism. It was deeply about racism. From the comments, the absolutely disrespectful and denigrating comments made to the black members of the Tennessee House, to the fact that these Republicans voted to expel, after charging three of these members, they expelled 2 black male legislators, and they voted to acquit in a way.
No, I can't believe it never crossed their mind how that was going to look. A primarily white state legislature expelling 2 black men, elected officials. I don't think they even gave a shit. This goes back to that literally the first video, that woman that was talking, I forget from what institute she was from. She was talking about they're so in that bubble. I don't think they really give a shit, because there's no competition in those districts. So they're not willing to listen to anybody else too. And I don't think they cared, because they're like, my district is safe. I'm fine. I'm going to get reelected. So what the fuck ever.
Or they voted to not expel the sole white woman, Representative Gloria Johnson, who has been a phenomenal ally.
Who herself raised this issue of race playing a role.
Yes, and they have no defense. There is no defense, and we have not heard any rational explanation for why that is. And it's so important that we recognize this for what it is, and that we see this for what it is, because if we do not, then we will not take the proper actions to stop it.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, thank you.
Of course, thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's been an update apparently like 3 hours ago, and I made sure to add the video here. We're going to play it right now. So let's go ahead and play this. This is going to be a wild ride.
So it has been 2 days since 2 state lawmakers in Tennessee were expelled for taking part in protests against gun violence, with a third keeping her seat by just a single vote. But they might not be gone for long. NBC now confirming one of those lawmakers is set to be reinstated as early as Monday. This news is coming as Vice President Kamala Harris made a surprise visit to the Tennessee Three yesterday. NBC's Priscilla Thompson is in Nashville for us and covering this story. Priscilla, talk to us. How exactly are they seeing Justin Jones, who represents, by the way, part of Nashville, I believe around 100,000 people, returning to the state capitol so quickly? And could his colleague be next?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way this works is that this decision now goes to the counties to appoint someone to serve in the interim. And what Nashville's Metro Council has decided to do, those lawmakers have signaled, is that they are going to hold a meeting on Monday. They are going to suspend the rules that would require them to wait 4 weeks to appoint someone after announcing this vacancy. And they're going to go ahead and take the vote to reinstate former Representative Justin Jones. And that decision would go into effect immediately. And we could see a similar situation happening for former Representative Justin Pearson down in Memphis and Shelby County. If the officials there choose to do that, they have not yet scheduled their initial meeting, so we're still waiting on that. But as for what comes next after that, the governor will set a date for a special election that will occur likely sometime during the summer, at which point both of those former lawmakers would be eligible to run for re-election. And if elected, they would certainly be back here at the State House. And earlier today, Justin Jones was speaking to his supporters, sending a message to his supporters about what he wants to tell them in this moment of limbo. And I want to play a little bit of what he had to say.
What I would say to the young people of America is that if we were not powerful, they would not try so hard to stop us. I was the youngest black lawmaker in Tennessee formerly, and now I'm a lawmaker in exile is what I say, because they were afraid of our voice. They're afraid of the generational shift coming to America, the reckoning that our generation says that we don't have to wait for some other time, but there comes a time which time itself is ready for a change. That time has come for Tennessee and for America.
And we know that there are calls for more protests and demonstrations next week, so we expect to see more of those demonstrators here making their voices heard at the state capitol. And I just want to mention, I was struck by a conversation that I had with a constituent of now former Representative Justin Pearson, and she said she didn't agree with what he did in using the bullhorn on the floor of the House, but she felt that this decision to expel these lawmakers was too extreme. And as you mentioned, she is among this more than 100,000 people who are now without representation as all of this continues to play out. Yasmin?
Interesting stuff. So Justin Jones is going to get reinstated as early as Monday. Remember, Jones represents Nashville proper, and Pearson's the one that represents Memphis. And remember, we spoke about it earlier too. Pearson, the lawmakers in the state legislature, the lawmakers in Memphis. Remember, it wasn't the folks in Memphis. It was the people in the Capitol, in the Tennessee state legislature, who threatened the Memphis officials, saying that money for those programs in Memphis and for the money for the stadiums and revitalization of Memphis may go poof if you reinstate Pearson. These young men represent change. They represent a frustration amongst the youth and many other people in the state of Tennessee, and in their district specifically, that you do not have to live the life that you're living now. There is change that can be made at the state and local level where you can be free of the suffering that you're feeling, that you're enduring and that you're feeling at this moment. But the current people in power don't give a fuck about you, dude. They don't give a fuck about you. They'll take your vote and they'll say these things that make you feel better, but they won't do the things necessary to actually make improvements in your life. Remember that too. So I saw this article. I was kind of perusing on the side here, and I saw this article too from Axios. Apparently this is a Axios sneak peek. I don't know what that is, but McCarthy faces far-right blowback after New York Times leak. Some angry GOP lawmakers warned that House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's position could be on rocky ground after the report he blamed members of his leadership team for Republicans' chaos over the budget. Why it matters. Multiple House Republicans argued McCarthy's criticism of Majority Leader Steve Scalise and Budget Chair Jody Arrington undermines their messaging and opens the floodgates for public infighting earlier than necessary. McCarthy told colleagues he lacks confidence that Arrington can deliver a budget proposal, according to an explosive New York Times article published Thursday. The California Republican also reportedly told allies he views Scalise as ineffective and unwilling to take hard positions. Ooh. McCarthy didn't deny conversations with allies disparaging the two of his top deputies, but said he rejects the idea of splits existing among leadership. There is. Between the lines, House conservatives say they aren't ready to pull the trigger on a motion to vacate that could oust McCarthy as Speaker, but this has ramped up the level of conversations. What they're saying: a GOP lawmaker accused McCarthy of using Scalise and Arrington as scapegoats before budget and debt ceiling negotiations have fully imploded. They're going to implode. The members I've spoken with are just stunned by this rebuking of his budget chair and certainly of our leadership, another House Republican told Axios. I can't imagine he will last an entire term. Love it. Representative Ralph Norman from Republican from South Carolina, one of McCarthy's 20 defectors who sits on the budget committee, blasted the infighting and called for McCarthy to take a larger role. The agreements made by Speaker McCarthy, among other things, is to begin the 10-year balanced budget now and with his initiatives and directives. It's his responsibility to get the 218 votes to ensure our nation's financial security, just as he did in securing 218 votes for Speaker. Behind the scenes, the report has reopened old wounds between McCarthy and Scalise, who was previously seen as a rival and potential Speaker contender if the California Republican failed to obtain the gavel. That is true. And to be honest with you, from everything I've read before, those two don't actually like each other very much too. But McCarthy was like the clear-cut darling because there's a lot of money behind McCarthy too. Others complained that the attacks undermine their messaging on their legislative accomplishments as the party looks to demonstrate they have governed in a narrow majority. The bottom line: Arrington and Scalise opted against publicly criticizing the California Republican, with Arrington telling Axios in an exclusive statement, "Our nation is staring down the barrel of a debt crisis, and my budget committee colleagues and I are focused on one thing: passing a budget that will stop this reckless spending and restore fiscal sanity in Washington before it's too late." Okay. There's something else here too. Ah, yes. Some more stuff too that I wanted to talk about. But ladies and gentlemen, we are moving to the main event. I'm not going to give you a lot of commentary here. I'll tune in here and there. This is something that we've all wanted. People have covered this already, but I want to give my 2 cents on it. In the left corner, the progressive pundit from MSNBC, who has all the accolades and who is a phenomenal journalist who I love so much and fights the power every night, Mehdi Hassan. But on the right, they tried to cancel him. They failed. He was vindicated. But he loves that sweet, sweet Substack money. And apparently, he's besties with Elon Musk. Maybe not so much anymore. I bring you Matt Taibbi. Well, Matt Taibbi basically told Mehdi Hassan, "You don't got the balls to bring me on your show." And Mehdi Hassan said, "Hold my water, boy. Let's have you on the show, even if you choose to wear a baseball cap, headphones, and speak in your little, speak in your home, too." Main event time, folks. Mehdi Hassan, Matt Taibbi. There is fireworks. Let's start.
The world's most powerful investment bank is a great vampire squid wrapped around the face of humanity, relentlessly jamming its blood funnel into anything that smells like money.
I love his way with words, man. This man's a fighter. I love his coverage too. It's phenomenal.
That was how in 2009, Rolling Stone journalist Matt Taibbi famously began the Great American Bubble Machine, his 10,000-word expose on Goldman Sachs and its considerable economic influence at the height of the Great Recession. The vampire squid was an indelible image, and it was textbook Matt Taibbi. If you were like me back then, you loved reading his blistering takedowns of America's worst villains. In 15 years at Rolling Stone and in occasional NBC and MSNBC appearances, Taibbi won lots of fans and awards for skewering anyone who shafted the little guy from K Street to Wall Street. But if you listen to him these days, he's telling a different story.
I spent 10 years covering the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. That was obviously a very serious issue, but this Twitter file story and what we're looking at now and what we're investigating now, I don't think there's any comparison. This is by far the most serious thing that I've ever looked at, and it's certainly the most grave.
I can't take this seriously. Oh my god. All right, Matt, bro, he can't. You know he doesn't take this seriously. Very much in the same way with Glenn Greenwald, who's a phenomenal reporter back in the day too. Just look at all these guys. Just like, it's the money now, man. It's just the money. He got canceled, and like his friends. I understand where he's coming from too. Like, he got canceled. His friends abandoned him. His friend joined the cancellation too, and like, it really fucked with them. And I think this is just him, like, fuck everybody. I want to get paid now, and it is what it is. I don't know what to tell you.
Story that I've ever worked on personally.
Yes, the Twitter files, quote unquote, 19 releases of select internal Twitter documents provided to Taibbi and other reporters and activists after the social media site was acquired by tech billionaire Elon Musk, remember him? Which made seemingly explosive claims about the politicized blocking of the Hunter Biden story, as well as allegations that Twitter shadow banned conservative accounts without cause. According to Musk and Taibbi and his reporting colleagues and the Republican House majority, those files show Twitter colluding behind the scenes with feds, NGOs, and yes, Democrats to silence critics. A new woke McCarthyism through digital censorship.
Democrats used to care about protecting First Amendment free speech rights too. Now it's like, okay, if you're attacking, and I said this on the House floor, I said, don't think they won't come for you. Oh, the big tech, big media, cancel culture, they may come for
Republicans. This was such a joke of a hearing.
But they never.
This was such a joke of a hearing. It's just him like proselytizing, like the entire time. He's a Sermon on the Mount. The woke left is gonna take you down. They want to silence the conservatives. Get the fuck out of here, Jordan.
Mob is never satisfied. They will keep coming.
Jeez, man.
But critics say the Twitter files don't come close to making that case, and that they also are a product of questionable journalistic ethics, gifted to Taibbi and others by a billionaire with access. And
it was extremely selective.
And then rapidly weaponized by conservative media with little regard for the facts.
The Republicans have brought in 2 of Elon Musk's public scribes to release cherry-picked, out-of-context emails and screenshots designed to promote his chosen narrative, Elon Musk's chosen narrative, that is now being parroted by the Republicans, because the Republicans think that these witnesses will tell a story that's going to help them out politically.
Is the Twitter file story as big, as damning, as revealing as its proponents claim? That's what we are going to debate today. Because in some ways, Matt Taibbi has become the man of the moment, with nearly 2 million Twitter followers, tens of thousands of paid subscribers to his Substack blog, and Republican lawmakers hanging on his every word. The man who used to gleefully heap abuse on the outrage industrial complex on Fox now appears regularly on that very propaganda network he once so wonderfully lampooned. Oh, and that video you saw earlier of Taibbi testifying in last month's Republican-led hearing on the weaponization of the federal government.
Yep.
He says that on that day, the IRS visited his New Jersey home to tell him 2 years of tax returns had been rejected. We reached out to the IRS, but they say they can't comment on individual cases. So, Late last month, Matt Taibbi asked me on Twitter, where else, to invite him on the show to debate the Twitter files and free speech and Elon Musk. Now, I've mocked him in the past for doing PR work for the world's richest man, and he's accused me of being an ardent establishment moralist. Great line. But today, I hope we're going to avoid the name-calling and keep it civil as I put my questions to him. Matt Taibbi, a National Magazine award-winning journalist who runs the Racket News Substack and broke the so-called Twitter file story, joins me now. Matt,
you can already
so
tell he's frustrated.
On the show. Why do you believe these Twitter files are so important, and what should our viewers know about what's in them that they don't know? Just briefly, your top lines.
First of all, I never said anything about woke McCarthyism, so do you want to take that back?
I didn't put that in quotes. I said a so-called woke McCarthyism. Jim Jordan has also talked about that, and that was a line into Jim Jordan. But happy to say that you haven't described it as McCarthyism. You've described it, I think, as a digital censorship complex. Industrial...
I said digital McCarthyism, not woke McCarthyism.
Okay, digital McCarthyism. We can correct.
Oh, my God. It's all right. Matt, why are you picking... Oh, my God. Oh, man, I can't... Why did you start with that, man? Why did you start with that? My guy, why did you start hot like that? I'm gonna like this video anyway. You know what, folks? Let's share this with everybody. Mehdi, do your thing, man.
Right, that, yes.
Okay, good. So you started off as I expected with the whole "what happened to you, man" routine. Well done. So yeah, these are, I think the rest of the stories speak for themselves. I don't have to talk about how important or not they are. The audiences are interested in them because of what they show. That there was an organized, systematic structure in place for the FBI and the DHS to talk not just to Twitter and to forward thousands of moderation requests to companies like Twitter, but also to virtually every other social media platform. This is essentially an organized system of quasi-state censorship, and it's alarming. It's a lot more than what we thought was going to be there.
Quasi-state censorship, he says.
Just looking at what we found, we don't have to make claims about it. They're upset about it because of what they're reading.
Well, not everyone's upset, and you do make claims, so let's talk about that today. And Matt, we're going to disagree a lot today. You've already started with disagreement, so let's start with some agreement. Should the FBI be wasting so much time and taxpayers' money flagging so many tweets to Twitter? In my view, no. Does the FBI have far too cozy a relationship with social media companies? Yes, I agree. But do your files provide evidence of government censorship? I don't think so. Let's just take the very first example you cited in the very first thread, which went mad viral. You wrote, by 2020, requests from connected actors to delete tweets were routine. One executive would write to another, more to review from the Biden team. The reply would come back, handled. Now, that sounds bad, but aside from the fact that the Biden team was not the government at the time, it turns out that at least 3, maybe 4 of those 5 tweet URLs that you linked to, that they link back to non-consensual nude images of Hunter Biden. Why was it wrong, Matt, for the Biden campaign, not the government at the time, to ask Twitter to enforce its own terms of service against people basically posting revenge porn? Do you understand why people question your credibility on this whole project when you omit such crucial context right from the get-go?
First of all, the reason that's important is because the ordinary person can't just call up Twitter and have something taken off Twitter. If you put something nasty about me on Twitter, I can't just call up Twitter and talk to the government liaison, whose name I won't mention on the air, and say, hey, can you take care of this? And have them take care of that. That doesn't work for the ordinary person. The Biden campaign could do it. Donald Trump could do it. But I can't do it. Can you do it? I don't think so.
You didn't answer my question. Why didn't you tell us what were in the URLs? Because it sounds much worse than it is. When you discover that actually it was simply a violation of Twitter's terms of service, that these were nude, non-consensual images for Hunter Biden, why not mention that? Did you not know? In which case, that's kind of incompetent. Or did you know and you were just hiding it from people?
Incompetent?
I mean, if you didn't know, if you put up
MSNBC. My God, you got 6 consecutive years of just screw-ups on the Russia story.
Well, that was predictable. If we're going to do predictable. Can you answer the question? Did you know what was in the URLs when you posted them?
It's a simple question. What was in the URLs?
Why didn't you tell us?
I don't need to.
Because it's relevant. You don't think it's relevant, but it's a violation of Twitter's terms of service?
Bro, what do you mean? You don't need to tell us what are the URLs. You made everyone think that, like, that the Biden campaign was fucking picking and choosing what can be put out there. Like, there was, like, no context in that. Dude, you provided, like, no context that was in the links. That changed is, like, people's, like, fun. I was wondering that, too. What's in the URLs? And I knew it had to be, like, something, like, bad. Too. By the way, too, you understand that, like, there's a reason why. Now, you can argue that maybe, like, political campaigns and politicians shouldn't have, like, that kind of, like, one-to-one connection with social media platforms. I can understand that, and I can actually understand an argument, too, and I tend to agree with that, too. But I want you to know, too, if you as the individual have, like, a problem, like, with a tweet, you can report the tweet. Like this. I don't have a problem with Tom Nichols here. He does good work. I think, what? The Atlantic? Yeah. With the Atlantic, too. You see these 3 dots right here? I'm on PC, obviously. You see these dots right here? More. Report tweet. Start report. You can then go through the process of reporting the tweet, too. And more often than not, it's going to get reported, especially if it's a very clear-cut violation. So if there's, like, revenge porn of you posted online, like, first off, by the time you find out about it, it's already out there for everyone to see. So the least thing you can do is get it removed so that it's not spread anymore, but people have probably downloaded it, put it up on Pornhub and all these other fucking websites, and it's out there. So let's not pretend like you don't have the tools available to yourself to do it. Now, can you be as quick as, let's say, the Biden campaign or Donald Trump when he was the president? No, probably not. But the same thing goes. When those tweets were put out there, people downloaded them and they were already on the internet too. So they're just saying, hey, remove those tweets now. It's the same thing. Like, you may not have, like, that ability to phone a friend there, Twitter, but you can take down stuff like that. Let's not pretend like the ordinary person doesn't have the mechanism. They're just not as quick as, let's say, a campaign for the presidency or an actual elected official like Donald Trump at the time.
To have nude pictures of Hunter Biden up?
Look, every time they make a request to Twitter, they're doing what you're arguing. They're making the argument that, oh, we're not actually asking. This isn't censoring. This is just the government pointing out that
that's
this or
what the
that.
emails show that you posted. They don't demand anything, do they? They say, can you check if this is in line with your terms of service? And those URLs weren't. So I'm wondering why you wouldn't mention that.
First of all, the government I can't even report that yet. All right.
What do you mean you can't report that yet?
It's self-evident what they're doing, and I don't have to make claims about what it is. I can just show you what they're doing. Everybody knows.
But you didn't, Matt. That's the problem. You didn't show the world that the Biden campaign asked for nude images. You didn't. Other people pointed out what those URLs were. You never did. And that's the problem, Matt. There's a lot of omission.
There's a lot of things that I wrote. Am I going to describe every single thing that I published?
That was the first Twitter file and the most viral tweet. Noam Chomsky, who you know and I know and we like,
said a subject you guys screwed up.
Said one of the, and we'll come back to that, has said one of the greatest forms of censorship in the media is censorship by omission. You've heard that quote. There's a lot of omission in the Twitter files. A lot you and your colleagues don't tell us. You mentioned in passing, for example, in your very first thread that the Trump White House made requests of Twitter too, i.e. the actual government, not the Biden campaign. But you didn't tell us what those Trump requests were. It took an actual Twitter whistleblower. Well, it took an actual Twitter whistleblower in front of Congress to reveal that Trump once demanded Twitter take down a mean tweet about him from the model Chrissy Teigen. Yet you didn't mention that in any of your Twitter files posts.
Because I didn't have that story. I don't have it.
Doesn't that tell you something? That you had the Biden story and not the Trump story? That Elon Musk was giving you one side of the story?
No, you don't understand. First of all, that first batch of files resulted in the firing of Twitter's general counsel. We were looking at something on a very short time frame, but
he's not doing a good job at all. He had to know, like, some of these questions were coming, right? It's not like, I don't think Mehdi gives him these questions ahead of time, but, like, he had to know some of these questions are coming. Bro, like, come on, you can't answer the question. How long has Matt Taibbi been in the business? So you get a certain set of files, and it's all about the Democrats, and it's all about Joe Biden. So then the question that I'm not a reporter, I would ask that, okay, Elon, do you have files then from requests by Donald Trump when he was in office and other Republicans? Because you're giving me a whole bunch of files from one side of the aisle. You're not giving me files from the other side of the aisle, too. Because if it's about like how government has such ease of access to social media, and you're claiming that both sides of the aisles are doing it, you're just reporting that one side of the aisle has done it. And the way he's reported it too was as if the Democrats in the Biden campaign at the time were the ones exploiting their access to Twitter, and it wasn't the Republicans. Even though when you actually like broke down what was being actually reported, both sides were doing it too. And Trump made even more requests than the Biden campaign did.
Report that fact. I was the first person who reported that Donald Trump made requests and had them honored on Twitter.
But you
What to say?
which ones the Biden team did without giving full context, but you didn't outline which ones. Well, maybe you should ask yourself why it is you didn't have it. Let me ask you this: a lot of your own Twitter files reporting shows top Twitter employees
they don't
struggling.
have it either, by the way. The whistleblower in Congress didn't have it either.
I know, but she did say under oath that this actually happened, so you can accuse her of what you want later.
I don't have to accuse them.
And I wonder why they didn't have it either, too. I wonder if Elon conveniently... That's the thing, too. I remember that hearing. I begrudgingly watched it. Unfortunately, I didn't watch it on stream to make content out of it, too. She says she didn't have it, but it's there, too, and she did it under oath. So the question then becomes, what happened to it? Well, let me put my conspiracy hat on and just say, it's out there somewhere in Twitter land, in Twitter servers, but I wonder if Elon conveniently set that aside and made sure no one has access to it so he can push a certain message out. You know what I mean? Come on. This isn't hard. Like, if you have all of Biden's requests and other top Democrats' requests, you definitely have Republicans and Donald Trump's requests.
So it sounds like you are. Out of interest, Matt, the emails you show really difficult content moderation decisions. They don't show Twitter rolling over. They show people actually having really interesting discussions. Unlike now, where Elon Musk just dictates that NPR is state affiliated and it happens overnight. They also show Twitter resisting requests to things that members of Congress have asked them to take down, members of the FBI. So I wonder, how do you call this a censorship industrial complex when Twitter, according to your own files, is saying no a lot of the time? I mean, if it was censorship, they'd have just rolled over every time Agent Chan of the FBI or Congressman Adam Schiff made a demand, but they didn't.
I published an explicit tweet which describes Twitter's internal ads policy, where they say publicly, we are going to represent that we make these decisions at our sole discretion. Internally, we are going to act when the U.S. intelligence agency, the U.S. intelligence community, that's the quote, when the U.S. intelligence community determines that an account is linked to a foreign malign threat actor. So they're talking about their two-faced system in the document. Now, yes.
But your words, Matt, you say, to their credit, they turned down requests. You say it yourself. Those are your words in the Twitter files.
Yeah, they did, but this is a story that has multiple layers.
Oh, come on, man.
The government is constantly applying pressure to these companies. It starts with a baseline.
And the majority of the time they say, bro, you said this too. I remember reading all the Twitter files, but you said this yourself. You're saying that they applied a lot of the pressure, but you said the majority of the time they say no. Only in like the worst circumstances or when there's a clear-cut violation of their policies, like showing Hunter Biden's fucking dick, do they say, yeah, we're gonna fucking block it. He's fucking lying, man. He's fucking lying right now. He said it himself. He's lying. I remember reading this explicitly.
Line of them not wanting to be engaged at all.
What a liar, dude.
Or to have
what a weaselly little liar.
It's not there, but kicked open when
come on.
In 2017, particularly in the fall of 2017, when the Senate Intelligence Committee starts leaning on Twitter to endorse their accusations that there had been a substantial number of bots linked to Russia's Internet Research Agency. And essentially it was made plain to Twitter that they would both be subject to lots of bad press and perhaps increased regulation if they didn't communicate with the Senate Intelligence Committee in the way that they wanted.
But communicating is not rolling over, Matt. All I'm saying is I don't see the evidence. If I saw evidence... They didn't. Adam Schiff says take down a tweet, and they don't, according to your own files.
What's Adam Schiff going to do? Is Adam Schiff the CIA? Is the CIA going to come to Twitter and say this?
Bro, is that his argument? Come on.
The CIA demanded a tweet got taken down, and they did it immediately. I haven't seen it.
We think it's the CIA, quote unquote, other government agencies.
Oh, come on, dude. Come on. What a fucking liar, dude. Come on, dude. You're like, this is what he's doing now. See, this is like, he's going into like conspiracy shit too now. It's just like, oh, it's the CIA. What proof do you have? Who else but the CIA would have not wanted like this tweet from a Russian state actor who's purposely trying to undermine confidence in our US elections? Who else but the CIA would have told Twitter not to post that tweet or promote that tweet? Based off of what information are you based off of what? Just my gut, baby. That's literally what he's doing. Like, I don't understand. Matt, come on, man. Bro, are you like getting paid that much money? You're not even doing like a good job right now. What is this? Oh my God, why did he do this like interview? But the problem is, he knows he's going to frame this, and people on the right are going to frame this, that Mehdi Hassan is like bullying Matt Taibbi. And that Matt is like you can't spin it. They can spin this. I don't want to say they can't spin this. They can spin this. And Mehdi's looking at him like, bro, I know you know better because I've seen your reporting. I've read your reporting. I've enjoyed your reporting. And you're willfully leaving things out and framing things in a certain way to make Joe Biden look like an idiot. And make it look like the deep state. Even though Donald Trump was the deep state. He was a part of the deep state. And the Republicans are in the deep state too. Okay? They don't want to change the deep state because they are the deep state. So is like Taylor, MTG, and Lauren Boebert and the rest of them. They're all in the deep state too. They're part of the machine. Like he's saying all these buzzwords at this point now because he knows he needs to promote that Substack at the end.
We know that the CIA was present.
You think it's the CIA. You began the interview saying you don't make claims, it's just evidence. Okay, let's talk about your evidence, Matt, because as I say, people...
Quote me directly if you're going to do this. Quote me directly.
What am I quoting? You just said this. We think it's the CIA. I said I haven't seen a single Twitter file where the CIA tells Yoel Roth to take it down.
We showed reports that came through the Foreign Interference Task Force. We know it came through the FBI. We know that's the destination by which it came, but the origin of the document we couldn't determine because, and there's lots of these. We have hundreds.
There are lots of these, and Twitter doesn't deny that they take stuff down, right? Twitter put out a report in
Caroline, and you're going to let me answer the question because you're accusing me of getting this wrong. So these documents, I went out and I talked to every former intelligence person from every agency that I could to try to identify where these documents came from. And I ended up quoting, I think I quoted John Kiriakou and I think one other person is saying that looks about right. Because the people that I talked to thought that this was probably, a CIA document. They thought that it looked like that. It could have been from some other agencies, but I put the document up and I said, this is what it looks like. This is what these people thought it was. I reported that other people talked about OGA. That's.
And I'm not, Matt, just to be clear, I'm not disputing that. I'm not disputing any of that. I'm saying there's no evidence that the government is ordering Twitter to take a bunch of stuff down, and Twitter's agreeing to everything. Twitter, hold on, let me finish. I let you finish. Let me finish. Twitter put out a report in 2021, as you know, which must shut down, a transparency report where they said the government asked us to take stuff down, and we took down 40% of what we were asked to take down. They've never denied that they take stuff down. Yeah, I think it's serious. I think if you were right, it would be 100%. The fact that it's not 100%, the majority of stuff they turned down, doesn't tell me there's a censorship complex. I don't understand how it.
I
think it's serious that they take down. 40% of stuff. Maybe, but that's not, nothing you showed suggests, in fact, the agent from the FBI sent emails saying, hey, do you mind taking this, do you mind looking at this and seeing if it's in line with your terms of service? That is not the police state that I think is being painted by Jim Jordan. By the way, you said about factual inaccuracies, Matt. Let's talk factual inaccuracies. Stanford, you talk a lot about the Election Integrity Project in the Twitter files, which Stanford and the University of Washington founded to monitor attacks on our elections. And you say some stuff about them that a lot of your critics say is not true, and that affects your credibility. You said the EIP was founded in response to the government dropping its proposal for a disinformation governance. Well, there you are. We're quoting you on screen. It wasn't. It was formed 2 years earlier. You suggest it was government funded, even though during the 2020 election that you're covering, it wasn't. You say they labeled 22 million tweets as misinformation in the run-up to the 2020 vote. They didn't. They flagged 3,000 election misinformation tweets for labeling, so you were only 21,997,000 off. And you also claim the EIP was, let me finish the question, you can come back in. You also claim the EIP was partnered with the government cybersecurity and infrastructure agency, CISA, to censor Twitter, but you mix up CISA, CISA, a Homeland Security agency, with the Center for Internet Security, the CIS, which is a non-profit. In fact, you added an A to CIS, I think people can see it there, in brackets, to make that false claim. It's just error after error, Matt, on just this one topic.
Error. But the other ones aren't.
No,
22 million number came from their own report.
Yeah, it came from a report in March. Do you know what the 22 million number is, Matt? Can you tell me? Because we checked. 22 million is the number of tweets about election misinformation that they just mapped. How many tweets were they? The ones they actually flagged to Twitter before the election. 22 million came after the election. It wasn't in the run-up. They flagged 3,000. So you were off by 21,997,000. It's another error.
They've said a lot of things. I stand by my story.
You stand by what story? You stand by 22 million were flagged in the run-up to the election, even though that number came in March 2021, which was after the election.
No, this came in their report after the election.
Dude, he's floundering. This dude is floundering hard.
Counted on the election. What they flagged to Twitter was 2,980 tweets, I believe. So that's nowhere near 22 million. Come on, what? You got something wrong. You got CISA wrong. Why did you add A? Okay, Matt, why did you add A in square brackets? Do you understand why people worry about?
I actually thought that.
And why didn't you fix it? I just checked the tweet before I came on air. It's been 3 weeks since it was flagged to you. Why not fix it? Do you not have editors at the racket?
I didn't realize that until now.
Okay, and what about the date? You got the date wrong when it was founded. You said it was founded in response to the Disinformation Board. That was last year.
Well, because Stamos is saying in the video that we were sort of created to fill the gaps.
No, that's not what you say in the tweet. That's not what you say in the tweet.
SIO was created in 2018.
No. You say, this is what you say, that the EIP was created after the public uproar paused the Disinformation Board. That's wrong. You need to correct that as well, don't you?
And this is the reason why journalists have editors too. People find editors to be a pain in the ass, but this goes back to I'm like pause editing this video because Mehdi's doing a great job of like checking like Matt Taibbi, but this goes back to when Glenn Greenwald was still with The Intercept. He wanted to cover the Hunter Biden story, so they were like, okay, so he started covering the Hunter Biden story. And apparently he wrote his piece on Hunter Biden. The editors were like, hey, you can't really substantiate the majority of what's in here too. We can't publish it. And that apparently caused like a rift, or at least that was like what ultimately led to him leaving The Intercept and doing his own thing too. And I remember as a result of that, he published the emails on his Substack. I think it was on his Substack when he created Substack. And when people were reading those emails, everyone was like, or the majority of sane people at least were like reading them. I remember reading them and I was like, dude, they're just doing like a normal like editorial process. And they were right too. There was nothing in your article from what I read so far at that point anyway, that would substantiate any of the claims that you were making in your piece. And you can't do that. And it makes The Intercept look bad. And I enjoy reading The Intercept. And I don't know if it's still up on his Substack, but those emails are up there too. And he was trying to paint it as like the editorial board at The Intercept were like trying to silence the Hunter Biden story because of some agenda. I don't know if you've ever read The Intercept. They're pretty left of like even like Mehdi Hasan and MSNBC. and they kind of regularly rather, like kind of trash like the DNC and Joe Biden, and like they criticize a lot about the Democrats, but they're telling you you do not have the facts to back up the claims that you had like in this story, and apparently that's censorship. That's why I always thought Glenn Greenwald, out of all of these like guys or people that say like they left the left, Glenn Greenwald and I think Tulsi Gabbard in my mind like fits in this role. They're doing it for the money, man, and he's making gangbusters. Same thing with Tulsi. They are doing gangbusters in terms of making money. So it just doesn't make any sense too. But I point this out because an editor would be able to fact check all this and sort of told Matt, hey, you screwed up here. You need to fix it, right? So he's pointing out all these facts too. Matt made such a big mistake. He clearly wasn't prepared for this. And frankly, he should have been in studio in a suit or some semblance of a suit, prepped properly, read through the Twitter files, and he could have easily backed up all the claims because other people reported on the Twitter files too, right? As commented on the Twitter files, and he could have easily found out what questions they would have asked. And it's the same things that Mehdi's bringing up too, the same criticisms, and he could have prepared responses to it. Whether or not they were good responses is a different story, but he's not prepared to defend this stuff too, because I think, and this is me putting my sort of like conspiracy hat on again, he knows a lot of this stuff is bullshit, and he was paid, I suppose, to represent this information in a specific manner by Elon Musk, and he knows better. But the almighty dollar overcomes any sort of moral or ethical responsibility that you've had for decades of being a journalist, I suppose.
That's what your words. You say, to quote you, after public uproar, pause the Orwellian Disinformation Governance Board, Stanford created the EIP. That's wrong.
Well, that's what they say.
You don't need sources, Matt. You could check the EIP website. It says it was created in 2020.
Well, that's the date that I just said.
And the Disinformation Board was 2022.
Okay. All right. Well, then that is an error.
Okay. So let's talk about Elon Musk. We talk about Twitter files. You have talked about.
Jesus Christ. You know what he just did there too. Like he admitted to like some people will say like, oh, he did the right thing by admitting to an error. But the error is still up there too, and multiple people pointed that out to him already, and he chose. And now he's only admitting it now because Mehdi Hassan is on MSNBC. He's a popular anchor, and he's now. It's just, bro, come on, man. It's such a bad look.
About why you don't want to reveal that he's your source, even though he's basically outed himself as his source. I get that you don't want to reveal your source as you're a journalist, but Barry Weiss has outed him. He's outed himself. What's interesting about Elon Musk is that we checked. You've tweeted over 30 times about Musk since he announced he was going to buy Twitter last April, and not a word of criticism about him in any of those 30-plus tweets. Musk is a billionaire who's been found to have violated labor laws multiple times, including in the past few days. He's attacked labor unions, reportedly fired employees on a whim, slammed the idea of wealth tax, told his millions of followers to vote Republican last year, and in response to a right-wing coup against Bolivian leftist president Evo Morales, he tweeted, "We'll coup whoever we want." And yet you've been silent on all of that. How did you go, Matt, from being the scourge of Wall Street, the man who called Goldman Sachs the vampire squid, to being unwilling to say anything critical at all about this right-wing reactionary anti-union billionaire?
Hello? Am I still on?
Yes, you're still on. I'm just wondering how come you've never criticized Musk despite all that?
Look, so I like you.
Oh my God!
I met him. This is part of the calculation when you do one of these stories. Are they going to give you information that's going to make you look stupid?
Come on, dude.
The motives are sincere about doing X or Y. And I didn't. I thought. I mean, I did. I thought his motives were sincere about the Twitter files, and I admired them. I think he did a tremendous public service in opening the files up. But that doesn't mean I have to agree with him about everything. And
Agreed, I agree with you. But you never disagree with him. You've gone silent. People would say that's access journalism.
No, I haven't reported anything that limits my ability to talk about Elon Musk.
So will you criticize him today for banning journalists, for working with Modi government to shut down speech, for being anti-union? You can go for it. I'll give you as much time as you like. Would you like to criticize Musk now?
No, I don't particularly want to. Look, I didn't criticize him really before, and I think that what the Twitter files are is a step in the right direction.
But it's the same Twitter that he's running right now.
I disagree with him. If you want to ask, I think this
understood, Matt. Well, I'll ask you a specific one.
No.
It's not in bad faith, Matt. Sorry. You say that Twitter... Hold on. Let me finish my question. You're saying that he's good for Twitter and good for speech. I'm saying he's using Twitter to help one of the most right-wing governments in the world censor speech. I will criticize that. Will you?
I have to look at the story first. I'm not looking at it now.
Hold on. I posted the story 2 weeks ago. You tweeted at me, invite me.
Oh, Matt, he is not prepared for this. Matt, what are you doing, my guy? Oh my God, you are not prepared for this. Dude, come on, man. Did you just think that you can just go on there, argue with Mehdi Hassan? Come on. I know you know Mehdi. You've seen his interview style, especially if he's going to have serious disagreements with you. Come on, man. Because Mehdi understands, too. This is a battle of optics. And Matt, just look at Mehdi, look at Matt. Look at Mehdi, look at Matt. This guy's in a professional looking studio. He's in a nice suit. He's clean cut. He's prepared. He knows what he has to say. He's critiquing him on salient points. He's agreed that he's wrong on some of those points, on some of the mistakes that he made. He has failed to make those corrections, even though it's been pointed out to him beforehand. He's provided him with evidence prior to this interview. He's posted about this prior to this interview, and Matt just doesn't look like he's prepared to answer these questions.
Show? You do, actually you do, because you tweeted at me saying, invite me on the show and I'll tell you my views. Here you are. What is your view? There it is. There it is. Look. Yeah, and you said, look, we'll read your words. Why don't you invite me on your show to talk about it, since you're so absolutely sure of what I'll say? You're right, I'm not sure. What is your view on Musk working with Modi to censor speech?
That's what you ask him about the particulars about it. But listen, this came up the first time. I think it was Twitter Files number 6. When you said after this was a big one that we had done about the relationship between Twitter, the FBI, and the DHS, and as that story came out,
I want you to know he's not really answering any of
tweeting
Mehdi's questions here either. He's just not.
You said, you don't. So essentially, you're arguing that this information was not in the public interest, that I somehow shouldn't have done this story that I'd worked hard on, because Elon Musk tweeted something. You don't think that story?
No, I said he banned journalists. I think hold on, Matt. If you're doing a story about free speech on Twitter and the head of Twitter bans journalists, yeah, I think most people. By the way, Barry Weiss, your partner in crime on that, your colleague, your reporter. Sorry for that euphemism. Your reporting colleague. She actually did call him out. So it's weird that Barry Weiss had more integrity on that. Some might argue, your critics might say, than you did. Look, we're running out of time. You don't want to talk about India? That's fine. You can go away and research it. But you volunteered to come on the show to talk about it. I got to ask you about the clip on Joe Rogan. You've seen the clip. It was played. It was mentioned at Congress. I do want to get your response to it. Can we play the clip of you telling Joe Rogan about how you should deal with sources who give you information? Let's play that clip.
With any kind of journalist, like once you start getting handed things, then you've lost. You know what I mean? They have you at that point, and you got to get out of that habit. It's like, or you can't.
Oh my God, I remember this.
So per your own words, Matt, you crossed that line and Musk has you. Those are your words.
The hilarity of this coming from MSNBC, which did nothing but vomit up fake Russiagate stories that came straight from the FBI for 6 consecutive years that you guys still haven't apologized for.
I wasn't there in that period, so I've got nothing to apologize. I'm asking you your words. Did you cross a line? It's a very simple question. You can what about and deflect. It's a simple question. We played a clip for you. I'm giving you a chance to answer. Did you cross the line? Your words.
No, I did not. The stories are self-contained stories that hold up in themselves. And what I was talking about in the Joe Rogan story, I was quoting a passage from Seymour Hersh's book, Reporter, when he was talking about when he was given a story by the CIA. I remember that interview, and that's bullshit.
he was quoting from that book too, but in the context of like the larger part, he was saying exactly what he said in that clip and what Mehdi showed on the screen too. If you as the reporter are reporting on the story and the source is just giving you information after information, you need to start questioning the motivations of why that source is so easily giving you information. Is it because they want you to report on a very specific narrative and not the actual facts and the truth? That's bullshit. He's covering his own ass on that one too. And he keeps bringing up MSNBC too. Yeah, they fucked up in that reporting, but we're not talking about that now. We're talking about you and your integrity. Did you just violate your own ethics when Musk was giving you this stuff too? And shouldn't your radar then been propped up and said, why are you like feeding me all this information knowing who I am and what I've done in the past? And why does it seem like you're only giving me one side of the story when there's other files out there that I think that you have? Because you can't just have everything involving the Democrats. You need to have the stuff involving the Republicans too, but you're choosing not to give me this information. Come on, he knows better, and I know he knows better.
About an Israeli spy that they had caught. And he was saying something to the effect of, I, who had always gotten the material, was being handed the material. So, yeah, look, it sounds bad, but this stuff is clearly in the public interest. It's real, it's true, and I'm doing the best I can to report it. The question is, the test you always have with your sources is whether or not this stuff is in the public interest and whether it's accurate. And apparently I've gotten like one thing wrong or a few things wrong, but mostly I think these stories are going to hold up over the test of time, unlike your Russiagate story.
So let me ask you this, Matt, and you're going to say
it's not his Russiagate story.
Just be clear, I'm not questioning your work ethic. You keep saying you seem to be offended. I'm sure you.
Oh my God, dude!
I was a big fan of yours for many years. I've always admired your writing, and which is why I have to ask this last question, which you're going to say in bad faith, but I promise it is. It's genuinely as a former fan. You tweeted in response to Jim Jordan, and you started the interview saying, oh, my journey. You have been on a journey for many of us. You said it was an honor. Thank you, Chairman Jim Jordan. It was an honor. A lot of people think that sounded a bit fawning to one of the most right-wing members of Congress. Later, you meet Ted Cruz.
I don't think it's an honor to be invited to Congress.
Who calls you a true patriot. He calls you a true patriot, and you're all looking very intense in that picture. I wonder, when you met Ted Cruz, did you tell Ted Cruz how you wrote in 2015 that he has, quote, big doses of Tea Party energy, and in 2018 that he's like an incurable skin condition? Do you understand why, Matt, those people who have read your stuff find it amazing now, the people you are?
Ted Cruz knows what I've written about him over the years. He knows that I talked about him as, I described him as having a face like a waterlogged Reagan mask sewn together at gunpoint. He knows all that stuff, but my God, that's the point. This is America. We don't have to agree all the time. I don't have to like them all, these people all the time.
You're right about that.
They're on this issue. They're giving oxygen to something that I think is important, that I think a lot of people is important. And if he wants to meet me, that's fine. If Jim Jordan wants me to come talk in front of Congress, I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to answer questions. If I'm wrong about something, I'm happy to answer that too. But
I guess where we disagree is
that I'm committing some kind of a capital offense by testifying in Congress about my own reporting, answering questions factually, and meeting these people is ridiculous.
I guess where we disagree, Matt.
It is an honor to talk to Congress. It was an honor to talk to Congress, and I'm proud that I did that.
I mean, not every congressional committee is an honor to appear in front of. I'm pretty sure it wasn't an honor to be invited when people were invited to the House Un-American Activities Committee. I mean, this is the point, Matt. The context, we're out of time, sadly, but the context is that the Republicans, are banning books and threatening the press. Ron DeSantis is threatening to get rid of anonymous sources.
Again,
and you're
mentioning something that I didn't write about. How many things
I didn't say you wrote about it. Well, exactly. That's the problem, that you seem to think the Democrats, not the Republicans, are a big threat to speech, and I just don't see it. I wish we had more time to get into that, but we spent a lot of time.
Are you crazy? I mean, you don't think the Democrats are a threat to speech? Have you been paying attention to
Yes, I think all politicians are a threat to speech. But in this country, if you think the Republican Party is not the biggest threat to speech, then I don't know what to say.
What the fuck are you, bro? This is like the biggest. He's like in the Republicans' pocket now. You kidding me? He just gave you like Mehdi just gave you like clear-cut examples of this. Yo, this dude, they must be giving this motherfucker a ton of money.
Florida. We have to disagree. We'll have to disagree on that. I think the black voter who was arrested in Florida, or the woman arrested for taking an abortion pill, might not say that Cat Turd 2 being de-amplified was the biggest story of the year. But we will have to leave it there, Matt. Thank you for appearing on the show.
What about your Hunter Biden story?
Appreciate your time. I don't think I've ever written about the Hunter Biden story, so maybe you should apologize to me for putting words in my mouth. You said at the beginning I put words. I never said a word about the Hunter Biden story, but we will be right back.
That went exactly as I thought it was gonna go. Yes, we are going to talk about this. I got a bunch of things. 5 out of 5 God roll. Yes, save the watch later. We'll go to the watch later playlist right now. Oh yeah. Yeah, we're still talking about it too. Mets won too, thankfully. More from Louis Rossman. You'd be surprised how much power like judges have. They have an insane amount of power in that courtroom. You cross a judge, or you catch a judge on the back on a bad day. We can move off. We're gonna move off from like the actual political content now. We did about almost 3 hours of political content here too. At this point, I just want to like chill out, play some video games, and just do. And I think this is how we're going to move forward with the streams. I think the first half of the stream is going to be political content. I'm going to get a couple of videos, react to those videos. It's going to be like actual politics. And then we're going to go into like culture war stuff afterwards too. And that's why I'm going to be playing video games, because I want to say I'm completely disinterested in that stuff. Like fucking with Destiny getting canceled for the umpteenth time for Mr. Girl. Like, I'm interested in that stuff, but not really. But it's just like good stream content to bring other people in. You know, so let's see. I'm actually interested. I'm more interested in the MMO. I'm not really a big fighting game person, and I haven't played fighting games since like Street Fighter 2. So I think I probably played one of the Mortal Kombats. I think Mortal Kombat 9. Listen, he knows exactly, his fucking editor knows exactly what needs to get done. The Secret Cult, yes. Yo, quick play is incredibly sweaty, dude. Like, especially when you try to test out like heroes and whatnot. Yo, it is incredibly sweaty. Dudes are like flaming you in fucking chat too if you're not playing well in quick play. I was like, god damn, did I actually get into ranked? I remember one of the games I was losing my shit because people were like, oh, they were criticizing my tank play, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? Bro, I was leading the team in kills, and I was getting like no healing. The two DPS characters weren't doing anything. They kept getting wiped. They were feeding, and I was holding it down as Roadhog, and I was getting criticized for the Roadhog play, and I was just like, what are you talking about, dude? I was going off on the guy, and he finally got on, and we started just shit talking to each other, and that was it. But like, yeah, it is like super sweaty. God damn, Flats is like just like coming in. That's the second channel, huh? Flats 2. Okay, let's go to watch later. The Diablo timeline. Let's see. There you go. And then we can go through all this. Remove. I think all the culture war stuff I'm just gonna put on here too. Remove. Yeah, this one I'm gonna have to. Sorry, Roy Jones. Just make him the host of the Daily Show. He is fucking hilarious, dude. We can watch this too. This is actually pretty interesting. But worse. Oh, yeah. You know what? I'll go ahead, drop this here. We'll drop the Papa Gut video here. And then we'll play put this at the end. And then we can play this here. No, all my political videos, I'm going to go ahead and put this in my politics for stream. So I can do that. But a little update on the Matt Taibbi incident too, from Tom Nichols. Maybe you could do a Twitter files about all this before he leaves. From Oliver Alexander on April 7th, that's yesterday. Matt Taibbi is leaving Twitter. You can't make this shit up. Textbook leopards eating people's faces party moment. Matt Taibbi. Of all things, I learned earlier today that Substack links were being blocked on this platform. Twitter, that is. When I asked why, I was told it's a dispute over the new Substack Notes platform. Since sharing links to my articles is a primary reason I come to this platform, I was alarmed and asked what was going on. I was given the option of posting articles on Twitter instead. I'm obviously staying at Substack and will be moving to Substack Notes next week. The irony is c'est magnifique. And yes, you cannot make this shit up.
Musk since he announced he was going to buy Twitter last April, and not a word of criticism about him in any of those 30-plus tweets. Musk is a billionaire who's been found to have violated labor laws multiple times, including in the past few days. He's attacked labor unions, reportedly fired employees on a whim, slammed the idea of a wealth tax, told his millions of followers to vote Republican last year, and in response to a right-wing coup against Bolivian leftist president Evo Morales, he tweeted, "We'll coup whoever we want." And yet you've been silent on all of that. How did you go, Matt, from being the scourge of Wall Street, the man who called Goldman Sachs the vampire squid, to being unwilling to say anything critical at all about this right-wing reactionary anti-union billionaire?
Hello? Am I still on?
Yes, you're still on. I'm just wondering how come you've never criticized Musk despite all that?
Look, so I like Elon Musk. I met him. This is part of the calculation when you do one of these stories. Are they going to give you information that's going to make you look stupid? Do you think their motives are sincere about doing X or Y? And I didn't. I thought. I mean, I did. I thought his motives were sincere about the Twitter files, and I admired them. I think he did a tremendous public service in opening the files up. But that doesn't mean I have to agree with him about everything. And
Agreed, I agree with you, but you never disagree with him. You've gone silent. People would say that's access journalism.
No, I haven't reported anything that limits my ability to talk about Elon Musk.
So will you criticize him today for banning journalists, for working with Modi government to shut down speech, for being anti-union? You can go for it. I'll give you.
There you go, folks. Oh my goodness. You guys want to do some Twitter scrolling? This guy is fucking hilarious too, but I don't know if he's putting a. It's one of those situations where I think he has a. I think this is actually pretty cool that they have this too, by the way, where you can create your own maps in Fortnite. That's a good move on their part. Where someone plays a character for so long, they become the character. You know what I mean? Like they can't distinguish the character from themselves. So we'll see what happens. Okay. It's fucking scary. Leaning back in my Chad Johnson living the best life, man. Congratulations to him. That Bengals team should have won at least one Super Bowl. Oh, hot dogs and beans? Chopped up hot dogs and beans? That shit's delicious, dude. And fuck the Phillies. That's what I say. Yo, their profile has raised. Okay. Leah Shapiro. Oh, what is this? Oh my God. Mr. Bedtime. New right-wing things describing crimes as generically as possible to pretend like they're not crimes. Someone gets they're not crimes. Someone gets convicted of a conspiracy and they start yelling, wow, so it's illegal to make plans with friends now. Okay. News flash from ProPublica. Supreme Court justices can have friends, even wealthy ones. Stop the presses. From Ilya Shapiro. Unless Harlan Crow has some business before the court, the ProPublica report about Justice Thomas is a big, breathless nothing burger. That deserves a like. I have to see the Mario movie now. Like, everyone's like talking about it. It really does have like a lot of people actually like it, believe it or not. But like some people don't like it, but it's like, I don't know. Cross section of a number of different cables. Very cool. Things cut in half. Bloodwood. Okay, that's creepy. Phase Rug stopped by to test out CS2 Live here. DreamHack. I'm not a big CSGO person, to be honest with you. I'll try it out again. Maybe that's shame. Very true, Mr. Bryan. Very true. Bro, I just never understood this idea for conservatives. This rugged individualism that they preach like every day. And then also saying that we don't want the government like to tell us what to do. Yet you do want the government to tell certain groups of people who and what they can be. I find that sort of unique dichotomy incredibly interesting and nonsensical. Yet again. Okay. So new worlds, which this person can give a shit about. Speaker Sexton sent lawyers to tell us we can't come back until 2025.
Cameron Sexton, he sent lawyers to tell us in the Capitol that, we can't come back until the next General Assembly, which is in 2025.
I want to make sure I get this right. So the Speaker of the Tennessee State House,
his attorneys,
they reached out to you all via your...
They stated that at the end of the resolution, it says that you're expelled from the 113th General Assembly. And so the ethics attorney stated that you won't be able to return. But then we talked to constitutional attorneys. And so it seems like that can uphold, nothing about this was constitutional, number one. But now they're going to say again, we're going to go around and make up our own rules, as they're so used to doing, and say that we may try and refuse to seat you.
Oh my God, this thing is like fucking getting out of hand. Why are they committing so hard to this? Dude, this is like a major lawsuit waiting to happen. I actually do want to see this. This is from MSNBC. That means this was posted 10 minutes ago from the Tennessee Holler. Okay, let's see, MSNBC. Holy shit. Does she have like the whole thing? Yeah, it's there. All right. You know what? Politics, that's tomorrow's stream. There you go. We can talk more. Oh, no. Save the playlist. I do enjoy Dave. Dave is a good show. I'm glad Ed's back. They're Nashville mistresses. Oh my God. Ron Fulakowski. Democracy docket. Jesus Christ. Dude, what is wrong with these people? Sunday's probably going to be just like a gaming day, to be honest with you, too, because I'm already like tired. I don't know how like some people can do like 6-10 hours of this. This is just like nuts to me. Jesus. The breakup. Yeah. I can't post on my subs. I can't post links to my Substack anymore, Elon. Yeah, you can post the articles to Twitter. You gonna pay me for them? Nope. Yeah, that's going really well. Schrodinger's app. I am looking forward to the final season of Barry. If you have not watched Barry, I'm gonna tell you right now, that's a show you should be watching. It is so good. Okay. I agree with this, Olivia. Dude, they are getting like major press, especially these two. Those two guys, Jones and Pearson, use this appropriately. You're going to rocket through the moon. Oh, I still prefer my Retropade Escapade. But this is good though. For every floor shot applies a weaken, right? I've liked it that way. See? The Act-Man liked the Mario movie. I think generally the majority of people of fans really watched it. The critics did not like it as much. Some of them just completely panned it. Jesus. All right. Okay, search for M. Taibbi. So where's his Twitter? No one has really cared about the Twitter files too. There's like Twitter files number 19. So from yesterday. Okay, well. Well, I just searched for Matt Taibbi, so I don't know what Matt here is talking about. He's talking about something else or about the specific tweets. Matt Taibbi claims all his Twitter files have been removed. That it's not a tweet and it's not fake. High progressives. This one unironically, yeah. So top, latest. Yeah, I don't care that much about it. Okay. Jesus. Dude, Waffle House, I'm sorry. I understand very much what it is, but it is good though. It is legitimately good. Oh, let's see. I need to like, if I don't stop streaming now, I'm gonna like get like super tired. Yeah, because it's what, 9 o'clock my time. I need to get back to like a regular sleep schedule. So this is good because we actually covered like quite a bit. We actually covered like quite a bit today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end stream right now. I got a bunch of watch later stuff too. We'll go ahead and like watch this tomorrow. We'll keep the politics like on the weekdays too. I'm actually glad like I got this section down because then I can make like 2 or 3 like good YouTube videos out of this as well. That's my plan. And then I can post those on Tuesday and Wednesday because I can take tomorrow in the morning. I can do a bunch of gaming, do some React content, and then just like chill out too. I also want to watch a couple of shows too that I've been meaning to check back on too and watch as well. So everybody, I appreciate your time and your attention. You guys have been absolutely fabulous. Check out my TikTok, all my other socials. Links are in the description down below. You guys have been an amazing audience. Thank you so very much. And as always, stay frosty, touch grass, and God speed. See you guys tomorrow. Regular gaming content tomorrow too, and some React stuff.